Okay. Hello, welcome to episode 6 of the Dice Hoses podcast. This one's called Incoming because we're going to be taking a look at artillery in bolt action. And I, as normal, are joined by my buddies and cohorts. We've got Derek. Say hello, Derek.
Hello, Derek.
We've got Sean.
Hello.
Evan.
Salud.
Evening.
Matt.
Hey.
And Whiskers McGee. Kevin.
Ahoy, hoy.
Okay. So, thanks for joining us on our 6th episode, which is awesome. And we even got a notification, like an email from Spotify saying, congratulations, you've managed
Oh,
to
good.
get
There
it,
you go.
which was nice. It was like,
Yeah.
yeah,
We had somebody watched it, or just because we published so many?
because we published. So,
Okay.
yeah, if,
YouTube watched it.
yeah, if we're on YouTube, we've got to build up a bit more yet. So we'll see. I think we need 1,000 subscribers before when you get your first thing. So
I wouldn't
We
say
are
we
like-
have to. I wouldn't say we have to.
you don't have to, because really we don't care. But because it's just 7 grumbly white guys complaining about stuff. So that'd be cool.
I'm here to educate, mostly to educate.
That's right. Yeah. So, Derek, what do we have in today's show?
Today, I'm just pulling up the agenda because I'm super slow and unorganized, and I just realized it. It is going to be talk about artillery and mortars. What's going on with the events? Because we have our big first Operation Catapult coming up, and and then of course our hobby plans. If anybody made or their hobby plans or broke their hobby plans since the last episode. Other than that, it's gonna be drinking, light talk, probably a short one this time around instead of our preamble of nothingness that we normally do.
Don't overpromise.
Under-deliver. Oh, sorry, yeah, over deliver, under promise. We do the opposite.
Yeah.
Sean, the events calendar for this month.
Yep, we have one. Operation Catapult is set to launch next Saturday, so we're about 8 days out at the moment. That's November 25th. It'll be happening at Tista Minis in Hamilton. Very nice place. We're using the Juggernaut tournament rules for this. It's 1,000 points, and it's the scenarios are the BAA for this one, the Alliance, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Juggernaut
Yep.
selector.
So we've got the place. We've got 3 spots left. We're almost filled. So if you're seeing this in the middle of next week, there'll be a few days left before the tournament. And thank you for actually watching this. But then you can still sign up as long as it's not November 25th yet. If it is, well, then you'll have to watch the next podcast to see how it went. Tickets, if you do want to show, are $25, but there is lots of prizes. And pizza and waters will be provided. So you need for nothing. Just show up with your army and your dice. Awards for painting, generalship, and after this, we'll start planning ourselves a 2-dayer for some point in the future.
Yeah. Did you see the propaganda posters I
I
sent
was
you?
just literally going to comment, Craig.
Yes.
Those are. I know you got the idea from somebody else, and I wish I knew who it was. If you do, give them a shout out because
Oh, yeah, I will
those
do, yeah.
are
Yeah.
fucking phenomenal. And there goes our
Yeah, those
rating,
posters are
but they were
wicked.
absolutely phenomenal.
Yep,
Yeah,
we'll
actually,
put pictures up.
First time I
I
ever
would
won one, and I'm
actually-
going to replace that picture right
Yeah.
there if I manage to get like the wooden spoon award. I know, Matt. I'm going to be fighting you for
You're
it.
gonna have to fight me for it, man.
but-
I got my eye
I
on
would, to be honest, I would rather have one of those than a prize support, like a box set or something.
well, the way you
I
were
would rather
talking
have
about
one
it-
of those because
And
if
the way
it
you were
is
talking
framed
about
as
it, I was
well.
like, just another certificate that they give out. Like, I don't give a shit. I'd rather have a model that I'll never paint or never use. At least I have something. But after seeing those like, are they poster size or like what? How big are they?
Yeah, they're going to be they can be whatever size, but I'm doing them 5x7, and I bought a frame a black frame that you can stand on and put on your table, so you can show what you're doing.
Okay, well, if I win any of them, I'm literally going to ask you for the file. Go to Staples and print out a big freaking poster because they look smoking hot. And when they finally get handed out, obviously on our next podcast we'll announce the winners and everything else. I will find some way to get those pictures up into the or links or whatever so people can see them because anybody else that runs tournaments, this is an amazing idea. Like it is it's something to take home that it, like actually if you're a historical buff, it's the pictures, just so you know, they're like the propaganda posters, but they're in the artwork that you would have seen in the 30s and 40s, you know, that kind of that boldness, the backgrounds. It's just absolutely amazing.
Should post them on the Dicehoser website with the person who won it.
Yeah. Well, get Craig to.
Yeah, we should do that. We'll do that on the website and the Facebook. Yeah. But yeah, he did a phenomenal job. I was very happy with what he did, and I have to do something for him because he didn't.
Are those the same that he did for his, or are they completely different, brand new?
I think they're completely different, brand new.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely have to give him a big thing. And who is him? I didn't hear you say.
I will make sure that I cover off, but I will get the details for when we do the next one.
Okay. His whoever you are, we're really sorry. We're terrible with names. We're old men with gray hair or no hair.
But yeah, he
wanted to include Craig.
Did an amazing job. So yeah, I've got to go print them out tomorrow, frame them up, and get that. So yeah, I think that's great. We've got about, I think, just shy of about $300 worth of prizes, and then there's also prize support as well that Warlords provided. So there's everyone will walk away with something, but there will be, the winners will get those trophies and store credit and stuff. So it should be good. But apparently this is the largest bolt action tournament that Testimonies has had so far. So, and we've still got a week to go. So if we could get a couple more, that would be great.
So maybe the next one will be a Sunday?
I'd love for it to be a Sunday if we could. But this is a forerunner to the GT next year, the 2-day tournament next year, because if this works out well, I've talked to people across the community. I've talked about a 2-day, and they've all been hugely excited by it. So I think we'll see how it goes, and there'll be lessons to learn for us and stuff. So
if there isn't, then we did something drastically wrong.
I know, right? That's when no one comes to the next one.
I just want to digress slightly, and that I'm disappointed that Sean doesn't have his pinky out when he sips his little paper umbrella cocktail thing that he's drinking there.
No pinky? There it is.
There it is. Thank you. Please continue, Craig.
Yeah. Sean has proven that he does not have syphilis.
What?
Well,
okay.
I haven't been tested in a while.
That the pinky out thing, when you have syphilis, is something to do with syphilis. Back in the old the day, they put it out to show that their joints.
No. I am the only person who gives stupid stories about historical facts.
Okay, so research this one, Sean, so you can let us know next time. It is a really cool, actually. It's a really interesting thing. It's a British thing, but it's a British thing for a reason.
Okay.
Interesting. I did not know that.
And before we go on any further, you may notice that three of us, and I'll let you guess which three, have retarded mustaches going because we're celebrating Movember. So if you wish to support us, there is a QR code on our website, and if it isn't, it will be soon because I just dropped this on Craig as I'm speaking. Please support us to support Movember, men's health. We're all old. We're all, in need of those things that don't normally get spoken of and supported. So it's a great, what's the word I'm looking for? Somebody help me out.
Cause.
Great cause. Thank you. Yeah.
I just realized Evan's cheating there.
Yeah, Evan's
totally cheating. Not say that.
He is.
Yeah. Apparently his wife made him fill in the chin so that he didn't have the weakness didn't show so glaringly.
Cleft palate.
But a handlebar mustache would go great with the hair he's rocking.
It's
But
is this
I'll-
a handlebar mustache when it goes down? I thought the handlebar mustache is when you spun it out.
It depends on who you talk to, but generally, if you do this part, that is also considered a handlebar
Because
type
now
mustache.
on
the
the
camera's not
Movember
picking
side,
it up, but it is
Yeah.
right here, folks.
on,
It is.
on
Just very gray.
November, the one that goes across and straight down is the trucker mustache.
Yeah.
is what it's
No, whatever.
Yeah. Anyways, I totally sidetracked you, Craig. I'll let you get back in on what we were doing.
Yeah, we're going for 2
My
hours now.
sister-in-law, though, who made a donation, she actually sent a picture of Adolf Hitler and said, "Do this for November."
Next year.
Well,
Well, no, there was someone who actually did it for a couple of weeks, a reporter did it a few years ago, and said that he couldn't he was going to do it for a month, I think, but he couldn't do it because he said that everybody looked at him with hatred, like
Oh, I
he got
bet.
spoke to in the street,
Nobody's
he
a fan
felt
of Charlie
bad.
Chaplin, man.
yeah, my cousin did that, and it takes him about a year to grow him out, but he did the mustache, and he parted his hair funny and everything, and he didn't understand what the Fuhrer was about his mustache. He didn't get it.
Oh,
We all get
Sure.
that.
jeez,
Yeah, we got.
Oh,
The funny thing about that mustache is Hitler was known for it, but there was so many. It was such the in fashion at the time. Woodrow Wilson, who made the League of Nations, that was the precursor to the United Nations, wore that. In the background that you see, if you're watching us on video, you'll see Diefenbaker, and if you look at his lip, he is wearing just that short little mustache. It's just his happens to be gray, and it's hard to see. But almost every historical figure from that time period had it. But because his was so black and it was just such a part of him, nobody's grown it since.
yeah.
He
Yeah,
is,
it's
he is,
crazy.
he is, you
He
know,
popularized.
removed a fashion thing from men for life.
But
For
what's
life.
weird is that Stalin killed more people, but people still have his mustache. Right? It's just
Fake
a crazy
bushy.
world.
Yeah, it's a crazy world.
Crazy
Things we're
world.
known for.
So yeah,
let's
How's the
let's
last-
move into our tactic focus, a new portion of the podcast, or one we did before, but not quite as well. We're going to move into, and I'm going to open up my notes, a tactical focus on artillery, including mortars in bolt action. So, general rules of artillery and mortars. Artillery, generally, there's 4 classes for artillery: light, medium, heavy, and super heavy. There are a few of those kicking around. And mortars are the same, except they don't have a super heavy. Mortars can only fire indirect, whereas artillery has open sight capability and can fire over the open sights. So there's a lot of rules to it. Like light and medium can be ordered to run, in which case it moves 6 inches, not 12 inches, but that allows it to actually move out of range, maybe, of whatever is shooting it. If they can't, they can only shoot in a 45-degree arc in front of them. If they can't see a target in their 45-degree arc in front of them, light and medium orders can be given an advance order and then fire, but they will be at a -1 because you get to turn, you rotate the base to wherever you want. Whereas heavy and super heavy also get to do that, as well as mortars. They cannot move at all. They need a vehicle to assist them. Now, there is a caveat to the -1. If you have a turntable, that turntable allows you on a fire order, after you've issued the fire order, to immediately turn and face without the -1 penalty, also without the moving penalty that an advance would give you, and you can shoot immediately at that target. So as opposed to doing advance, which would be 3 + 1 for the move for 4, this would be 3, you turn, there is no movement penalty, so it'll be 3, and then you count up for whatever other modifiers to hit are required. Super heavy and heavy mortars need vehicles to move them. Those vehicles are, all vehicles in the game have a weight class, as it were. I'm going to use quotation marks there. And what that basically means is some vehicles, like Jeeps, can only move light vehicles, and then some of the heavier tractors and whatnot can move right up to the super heavy. So look at the tow that you're putting in your list, because it might or may or may not be able to actually move that that vehicle or that artillery. Now mortars, on the other hand, they advance when given a run order to move them out. They actually, whether they're heavy, medium, or light, they move the full 12 inches that a regular infantry or manned unit or unit team would do. But they can also be given the advance order for the turning in place to see something outside of 45-degree arc with the -1. There's a bunch of other rules for limbering and unlimbering and whatnot I can bring up later as we talk, but let's just move into thoughts of, like, do you use these? If so, why? If not, why? Are there any special ones? Like I would like to discuss the spigot mortar for the Japanese. So if you have any the spigot mortars going for, like, or is there anything like that in the armies that you guys use that possibly has a special rule? So let's start this out with Evan, because it looks like he's chomping at the bit.
No, I just wanted to add a bit of a historical note. So sometimes in the rule book they mention howitzers. So traditionally, the U.S. military doctrine is probably the easiest to explain. They define a gun as being 0 to 45-degree elevation, and a mortar as being 45 to 90 degree. Then a howitzer is anything that can fire 0 to 90. So that's where the definition originally came from, and it's a butchering of a old Czechoslovakian word, which was from the 14th century, which was a catapult that shot stones at crowd to try and disperse rioting crowds and scare horses. So, history lesson end.
So it was trying to motivate them to leave?
Oh.
Yes, like crowds are.
Welcome to
protesting.
Dad Central, people.
Now I know where the word came from.
Yeah.
Where do the multi-launchers fall? Like under super heavy, or could they fall under each
They've
category?
got their own class, and I'm going to be honest. I believe it's like just straight multi-launcher is its own artillery class, as it was. All the multi-launchers that I saw were on vehicles, so I didn't think the move orders, or whether it's a run or advance, would be applicable to them, because basically if they need to turn, they advance, and the vehicle has got up to a 90-degree turn. But a lot of people don't realize that like a light or medium howitzer, if you give it a run order, can actually move 6 inches. But a light, medium mortar, or for heavy for that matter, mortar, when you give them a run order, get the full 12. So there's that little difference, and you got to remember what you're dealing
There's
with.
another difference. 50 points gets you a light howitzer, regular. 50 points gets you a medium mortar, regular.
Yes.
Pretty much the same stats, except one of them's got a gun shield and can direct fire.
You also
But doesn't have a
different
observer.
Yeah, you also get a different pin value, I believe, for when you hit.
Well, the Italians don't have a pen. It's just HE. And HE only depends on the 2-inch, and they're both 2 inches.
Oh,
So just to answer Matt's question,
in which case you really want to go with the howitzer, because a sniper won't remove it from the board.
And it's got a gun shield, yeah.
Well, the gun shield
For others,
won't
for
affect
machine guns, right?
the gun shield won't affect the sniper, but if the sniper shoots your howitzer, he's only removing a guy, because exceptional damage doesn't happen to them. Whereas if he hits the mortar, snipers, when they shoot at mortars and LMGs, they always hit the breech and they always hit the tube.
I recently made the shift from medium mortar to light howitzer for that reason. But you know what they all have in common? Light mortars, heavy artillery, multi-launcher rocket launchers. Smoke. Has anybody ever fired it?
No, because the rules in this game are really wonky for smoke.
No, they're fine. Because it's going to happen. You either put it, 1 in 6, you put it where you want it, 5 and 6, your opponent puts it within 12 inches. But now it's out there. You can
But it-
still, you
but
pick
it-
the right spot, it still could be useful to you.
Yeah, I'll give you that, but it's the fact that it moves every turn.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, Matt, to answer your question, the multi-launchers count as a heavy mortar, but they don't get the ranging in repeat.
Yeah, it's always on a
bombardment.
6.
6, 5, 4. Yeah, it's always on a 6.
Yeah, and they're different because there's like Howling Cow
Yeah.
is one.
Mhm.
The coyote.
All the large, all the main
There's the
armies have them.
Patricia, there's the Nebelwerfer, there's the
Yeah.
Nebelwerfer.
I don't think the Japanese and the minor nations get them, but all the other major nations, because the Japanese are obviously a major nation. But
What's interesting though is, I mean, so we could take a step back for a moment, I think, and just at the holistically at artillery mortars and stuff, because on the battlefield they all play different roles, right? Because you would have artillery would not be in bolt action. They really should be off the board.
Oh, yeah.
Right? They should be
Absolutely.
like 2 boards away, firing in, and the only time you would really see artillery is if the lines were being overrun.
yeah,
So I think
but that would be the
there's
same
one
for heavy
element to that.
mortars as well.
Yeah. Your medium mortars would typically be, as if I recall, at company level, and they would be supporting company several platoon attacks as they're going in, and light mortars would be going in, but wouldn't be on the front line. They'd probably be just behind, laying down, trying to go for machine guns and stuff like that. So I think the mortars you would more likely see on the battlefield, which would be right within bolt action, except the heavy. The multi-launchers you wouldn't see, and the artillery you wouldn't see, and the howitzers you wouldn't see. They would be all off the table. So I think there's a slight discrepancy in that on the battlefield in the game and how they're brought in. I then
Interesting
think,
though to that,
yeah,
the ranges are still made as if they were almost off the field, and by that I mean they have the whole, like they have 72. They got the whole board, but their minimum range in some cases is 3 feet, which is not across the board. It's like you got to put it in this corner so it'll hit at least that third of the table on a direct fire. So they didn't adjust that for it.
See, what I'd quite like to see in bolt action is that you actually don't put them on the table. You have a little tray, and you put them on the tray, and you can do things like counter battery, and you can do stuff like that. That to me would maybe make it interesting,
That would
rather
be
than
very
them being
interesting.
on the table, right?
The Canadians would be the kings of that.
You could argue who would be king, but so
Canadians invented
so I
counter
think as
battery.
well that the rules don't reflect truly, other than maybe mortars, how some of the units operated. Like I'm reading the biography of Otto Carius, and there's a bit he's talking about on the Eastern Front. For those of you who don't know, he was a Tiger Ace commander for the Germans, and he talks about how one of the battles he went into, a German Nebelwerfer unit fired their rockets too short, and it hit all their tanks. They had to batten the hatches, but unfortunately, all the infantry that was outside
They couldn't.
got wrecked. Right? But he was saying the problem is you could never follow up with someone. Like with regular artillery, you could follow up with like, who the hell's job was this? And you ballsed it up. But with Nebelwerfer units, you could never do that because the Nebelwerfers were so effective and the Soviets hated them so much, and probably the Americans, that they actually, as soon as they fired, they didn't reload. They dismantled and went off and relocated.
Yeah.
Right? So there's an element of that you don't see in the game because of that. So I think that there's a part of me that thinks I understand why they're in the game, but I don't really think they should be on the table.
Points spent that can be removed.
Yeah.
As opposed to like the coastal a battery or the battleships that are supporting Normandy or whatnot, that nothing you're going to do is going to do anything to them. But these like in difference, you can counter battery, you can do something to remove them or negate them.
I think it should be if as well that if you decide you want to use, and this will be a different episode, but if you want to use a forward naval observer and you've got a little tray at the side of the table, you better paint a ship to put on that tray. Right?
Big one.
Yeah, big one.
This
But
big.
it could be, but it
Use that
but it
use
could
if it
be,
can send it too far away.
yeah, but it could be, you could use one of the naval ship ones. What's the
Victory at sea.
Victory at Sea?
Victory
Yeah,
at
you
Sea.
could use one of those and paint it and put it there. That'd be cool, right? That would reflect you actually using it. So I think you still need the models. I just don't think they should be on the table.
No.
That said,
that's an interesting point.
they're in the game, so I think that they all do, although they do similar jobs, they do it in different ways.
Yeah.
And
Well, back to what Sean said, the medium mortar
Yeah.
versus the medium howitzer, and
Light.
his smoke comment. The medium howitzer put us out a 4-inch.
Light.
The medium howitzer. Well, the same for the light. The light mortar does 3. The light howitzer does 4. The medium mortar does 4. The medium howitzer does 5. So there is a little bit of difference there. Howitzer's doing more.
I think mortars and lights are 2 inches. I think medium
Yeah.
mortars are 2 inches.
I'm talking
Light
about
mortar is
smoke.
1 inch.
Smoke. I'm talking
Oh,
about
smoke.
smoke.
Right, yeah. I think so
Yeah.
still,
Yeah.
too.
No, I'm like
Yeah.
literally.
So for me, mortars, they do different jobs. It depends on how mobile you want your army to be.
Yeah.
Right. So
And the
if you want
12-inch
a more
move is nice.
mobile,
There's time when that 12-inch move is nice.
yeah, and don't forget so artillery and infantry units can claim objectives, right?
Because they're
So if you've got a mortar team, you can actually move it and claim an objective with that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'm not
but a
advocating you
howitzer-
do, but right, but
A howitzer can pop one of those stupid transports full of like SMGs or flamethrowers.
yeah,
yeah.
effectively.
Yeah.
Now the howitzer, he's got the versatile rule, right? Or most of them do, which is that I don't know if they all do. I think it's the light howitzers do, which is the ability to fire both as a gun and as an artillery piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they all can.
Everything does.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
some
they
of
all
the
can.
I think
Just
it's the
they
other
don't
way
have
around.
AP.
Some of the AT guns can fire
Yeah.
both.
That's
Yeah,
right.
'cause I think the
Yeah.
ZIS-3 is a AT gun, but it can also fire as a howitzer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas the
Like
25
88.
pounder
Yeah.
is an artillery piece that can also fire
Yeah.
as an AT gun.
Well, no, the 25 pounder has AP. It has has a pen value when it direct fires.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
All the howitzers can direct fire, but they
Yeah.
usually don't have that pen value.
Yeah.
They usually have HE under their pen value.
Right, okay. Got it. I see what you mean. Yeah.
So that goes back to the word howitzer, because the rule set defines as anything with the word howitzer can fire open sights or shoot indirectly. That's how they define it in bolt action rulebook.
That's historical by the word.
No, the other thing as well is that you can have both a howitzer and a mortar because they're 2 different slots, right? So like in my British Desert list, I have both. I have a 25 pounder and I have a medium mortar.
Now, some of the howitzers that I've been looking at, they don't have observers though. So in my mind, that's kind of a downside.
I think it depends on the entry because like British can have a
Yeah, I
have
noticed
a-
that the 25 pounder can, but the German LE something or other.
Yeah,
I don't think
something that's
can.
generally used as artillery but has an AP value will have a spotter. Something that was like a Pac 36. That might not be a artillery piece, but something that has.
There's the SIG 18, which is an anti-infantry one, and it's comes without a spotter.
Yeah.
Because it was more for close support rather than longer
What
distance, like
about
a mortar.
what about
Okay.
Zeiss 3 and Zeiss 2 for the Russians? Because those were both.
Yeah.
Yes, they're both. Yeah, they're similar to 20. The Zeiss
They have-
3 is similar to 25-pounder.
Do they come with an observer?
That's a good question. I'd have to look at the entry for that.
Because
So
they
I'm
were
just saying,
shot both ways, right?
yeah. So I'm just thinking like you're giving up,
Both
you're
ways.
gaining the gun shield, but you're giving up an observer. So you kind of need the gun shield because you're now putting it in an area where it can get shot at versus hiding your mortar behind a building or keeping it a bit safer.
A lot of people take an inexperienced mortar because they just want a way to put down HE. We haven't really talked about why you want mortars in the first place.
Yeah,
But they just want to put down the HE, and inexperienced do not come with an observer.
yeah,
Right.
I hate that. I personally bind without a spotter.
I
to
don't
me.
understand where that came from. As a member of a former member of the military, when you were
Inexperienced.
trained on the mortar, you were trained on how people spotted for you, like how to adjust fire, which I just don't understand. Like inexperienced, so you've never seen combat. You still have your training to adjust fire for a spotter. If a spotter says -50, you take 50 off the. You know what I mean? Like I don't understand where they came up with this concept of an inexperienced troop don't understand how. Like when the spotter yells at them, take 50 off your range. They don't know how to adjust for that. Like I don't understand that. That's the one thing that I will argue with you all day long. At least from my
Maybe
aspect
Bolt
of as
Action's
Canadian.
version of World War II, inexperienced means from the street to the front line with nary a stop.
Yeah. But
Yeah, literally.
but
out
those
there,
generally
basically.
those people weren't given special weapons.
Well, what are you
Yeah,
gonna do?
that's the point I was going to say, Derek. Is like I can understand inexperience. Like you've been conscripted, the Germans are invading the motherland. Here's a bullet. Your buddy gets a gun, and off you go. You're totally inexperienced. But a mortar is like a more expensive, more complex
You
thing.
don't give people sniper rifles. You don't give people mortars. You don't give them the squad special weapon like the LMG unless they know how to use it. Like even an inexperienced person has been given the basics of this is how it works. So
Because theoretically, inexperienced, you should roll a dice to see if they put the shell down the thing the wrong way,
yeah,
down the launch tube.
they don't last. Darwin's from there. Sorry, what was the Zis you were talking about? Which Zis?
But basically, it's a light howitzer. Is a Zeiss 3 is a howitzer,
Oh, the Zeiss 3.
and it's 50 points for the regular, and it's got pen plus 2 HE 2-inch.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Does it come with an
the
observer?
Versatile rule.
Does it come with an observer? No, it does not.
Yeah, because Russian doctrine, right? They were normally running them to the front lines.
Yeah, but I think it doesn't come with the observer because this was my point earlier. Is it's meant to be a gun, not an artillery piece. Like when you read the versatile rule, it says it can fire as a light howitzer because it can fire like over the as an artillery piece, but it's generally used as an anti-tank piece.
Yeah, whereas with the British, it comes as light artillery.
Because it was an artillery piece, they know there's a spotter out there, as opposed to, but they could use it direct fire as a gun. That should be the same for one of the packs.
HE
But
and
the 88.
AT as well.
88.
The 88 probably has no observer.
Yeah.
No,
And
you
it can
can.
do both,
You
right?
can purchase it.
You
as
can, eh?
You can.
Oh yeah, because they were artillery pieces.
Yeah.
And it was von Luck who said, "You're going to shoot that tank."
They
Or
weren't
else.
even artillery pieces; they were anti-aircraft guns.
Yeah. That
Okay.
too.
Yeah.
That's right. They were anti-aircraft guns. But they remember Band of Brothers when he said there's a bunch of 88s and they were probably just normal, artillery
If you
pieces,
watch
Yeah,
the
they were.
105s or something. And
No, if you watch the making of the director's commentary, they couldn't find enough like 88s, or they couldn't build replicas of them in time for the filming. That's why they used whatever guns they could.
But was it
find.
really 88s in that battle? It's a
At
very well
Burford?
documented
It
battle.
was an 88 there, yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Was it
He
really?
did take 88s.
All right, I'm going to drag this back in and I'm going to start asking questions of people here. So,
Uh-oh.
would you use, Matt, a.
Would you use me?
I would not use Matt.
would
No, I
not
wouldn't use me
you.
either.
No.
Would you use artillery in your list, Matt? If so,
Of
would it be
course.
generic or something specific? And why?
What do you mean by generic? Like I take
Like
medium mortars a
most
lot.
in most of the artillery lists, they have the choice light, medium, heavy howitzer, or
Okay.
then you can get into the specifics of here's a Zis 2, a 25-pounder. You know,
I've done a lot of medium mortars. Again, I don't know. Maybe it's my play style. I like having the observer. So I'll hide the gun behind a building or behind a forest, and then use the observer somewhere safe. Usually, I like the look of artillery pieces, like the 25-pounder. The Germans, I forget which one it is. The LE something or other. It's a light field gun.
Mhm.
It's got the gun shield, and I love the look of it. And I understand that was meant to be wheeled up and take shots at a building to help the infantry. I've never got the guts to use it because I'm worried that I have to put it in a spot that it's just going to get shot at. But last year I used the 88 quite a bit with my DAC force, and I loved it because of the versatility. It controlled the table edge or not a table edge, but like a whole sector. No tank wanted to go near it. And then if there wasn't a tank nearby, you had the observer on the other side of the board, and you could target something over there. So that was,
you keep
I
saying
loved it,
LE.
even though it's,
You
sorry?
keep saying LE, but I think you mean LG40.
Sorry, yeah.
LG41.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Just because there's somebody
yeah.
listening of our
Yeah.
5 listeners that aren't us, is gripping his seat, yelling out, "Not LE!
You idiot!"
You've said LE!" Sorry, continue.
Yeah, no,
now
that's
I've
awesome.
Totally
Yeah.
sidetracked you.
Now you say, I'm like, oh yeah, I picture that now. But I love the 88 for that versatility. It's expensive, but I think it's worth it just for that.
The 88 does not have a versatile rule.
We'll talk
Which is
about
interesting.
Yeah, it
static anti-tank guns one time, and I'll tell you why they suck.
Are you looking in
Well,
the original
I'm just looking
rulebook, or
at easy army. So okay,
Oh.
let's just transition right into Sean, and he can tell us why he thinks they suck. What would you use?
Oh, no. I said static anti-tank guns.
Well,
suck.
okay. So, would you use artillery in your list? I know you play Italian, so you're like hurting to spend points, so you probably just put it on the board for that one time it actually works. But would you, if you had the option, play artillery, mortars, or would you say no? If so, which one? Yes, no, and why?
So one point of view would be mortars are a complete waste of time because they don't do nothing unless you roll a 6, and then they get sniped out turn 2 or 3 and they haven't done anything. So if you go with a minimalist mortar, say a light mortar, you still have that threat because that's what the mortar is, right? It's a threat, and you need that threat. You need that threat to get somebody to move. If somebody's camping in a strong position, you've got something you can put on them. So the answer, yes, I do. I do try to make sure I always take. I barely play this game, so take my advice for what it is. But I do try to take an HE template just to get someone to move. And I used to take medium mortars, but now I'm in the light mortar because it gets to move and fire, and the light howitzer because of the direct fire option. Because you don't always have sometimes your observer goes away, and just being able to shoot that truck full of flamethrowers charging your front line, as they often did in World War II, is quite useful. And I'm fond of mortars. for that reason. And who else was fond of mortars was John Graves Simcoe. Now, he was only a lieutenant colonel when he was traipsing around Virginia, but he had a habit of snatching them from the enemy. They would do little raids across the Elizabeth River down there by Great Bridge. And he one time he managed to snag a 13-inch mortar along with 5 cannons just in one of their little trips across the river. So that was then when he said, good thing it was 13 inches because anything under 10 and we have to throw it back. And that's why now, if you were to go there and you go fishing down at the Great Bridge locks down there in Virginia,
Yeah.
you're only allowed to keep catfish that are 10 inches or larger because of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that story.
It's true.
Okay, so we
I
digressed.
agree. Right? Yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff like that, right?
To anybody losing their mind at the 88, I was looking at one entry of the 88. Matt was looking at the other. The Versatile is the Flak 36, which is obviously labeled as a dual-purpose AAAT gun, as opposed to the Flak 43, which is literally just an AT gun. Evan, do you use, as a French player, do you use artillery? If so, why? And is it just because you're a French player you have to use artillery, or is there a specific reason you like it?
Don't have to. Well, I get one for free, so that's the army rule. Playing a singles tournament list, I will take the one free one. Playing a doubles tournament list like we did at Adepticon, it made sense for me to take 2 and some anti-tank guns, other types, and be the defensive player, and had, in this case it was Matt, and have Matt be the offensive player. And I will, as Craig mentioned earlier, artillery can hold objectives. So camping at the back, trying to hold them, and someone else goes and seeks out the enemy. You're starting to control fire lanes. And to Sean's point, I totally forgot to fire smoke in every single game we played. So, yeah.
It's good when you're advancing. Turn off Tiger Fear or something like that.
Yeah. I personally, in the Canadian list that I'm building, I've got a mortar, but I don't think I would take a artillery piece per se in the truest sort of howitzer kind of sense. I would take I am taking the Churchill with the dustbin launcher thing on the front, but not from a pure howitzer gun perspective.
Good to know. So we've mentioned smoke a couple of times, and like we've all mentioned, this doesn't happen very often. So I'm going to read out the big book because probably a lot of people haven't even heard or known about it because it doesn't happen very often.
Everybody knows about buildings, though. Everybody knows.
Yeah,
Everybody,
it's not a
especially
fucking
Craig.
building.
Craig doesn't.
It's
Yeah,
not a fucking building.
Craig's learned his
Building a
lesson.
table full of buildings.
So when firing smoke, a fixed point on a battlefield is nominated as the target, and a 6+ is required to score the hit, not a 6+. And if the firer remains stationary, which I mean artillery does generally, mortars may not, you get a 5 +1. So just like regular ranging in, it happens. If when you don't land, so on the first one, when you don't roll your 6, because you don't unless you're Spigot, the shell doesn't land on target. The opponent relocates it, like Sean said earlier, anywhere within 12 inches. If you fire it again next turn, you got a 5+. If you miss it, your opponent puts it anywhere within 12 inches. Smoke counts as soft cover and dense terrain. So
dense terrain.
Yeah, so if you're in it, you can't see it, and if you're in it, you get your -1 to hit. If you're on the other side of it, you can't be seen. And this is the part where I don't like. On a roll of 1, the smoke is dispersed. On a roll of 2, all smoke on the table drifts D6. On a roll of 3 or more, the smoke stays where it is. So there's that potential it's moving around, but it just moves like you roll the die and you roll one of the order dice because the order dice has an arrow on it, or you can roll a D6 and just pick a pip that tells you which direction to push. Generally, what people do is they roll a D6, and wherever the 1 points, that's the direction it goes. And if the 1 is down, they pick one of the other odd dice.
Don't the order dice have a direction on them?
Yeah,
Yes,
they
they
got
do.
the arrow. That's the best dice to use. Just pull one out of the bag, roll it, put it back. If you score a hit with multiple launchers, you can pick D3 -1 additional points within 6 inches and place your smoke templates. If you miss, the opponent rolls D3 -1. Sorry, I think I said D3 -1, and he places that many smoke mortars or smoke markers. Smoke markers are light, medium, and heavy mortars 3, 4, 5. Light, medium, heavy howitzers 4, 5, 6. So inches, yeah, inches in diameter. So you're just placing a bunch of discs on the table that you can't see through and gives you -1 to hit while you're in it. Kevin, now that I've brought up smoke that you've never used in your life,
Nope. Never used it in a game.
would you put artillery and or mortars in your list, and if so, why?
Yes, I usually have a medium mortar because I get the spotter, which I like because you can spread them out, put the mortar on one side and the spotter can look at stuff on the other side.
So a regular.
I also usually use, regular. What did I say? Medium? Anyway.
Yeah.
And a light howitzer. The Germans have a nice little light howitzer. I think it's the same one Matt was talking about, where you could wheel it. The guys could just run it around the board. But it's good for just hitting stuff and putting pins on it. That's it. Just there's artillery or something, put some pins on it. That's what it's good for. But I use it in all my armies. All my lists I've come up with, I've always had the mortar and the light howitzer. They come in handy.
Yeah, so the LG-40 is what he was referring to for the Germans.
Yeah. It's a little, you can just manhandle it all over the place. Yeah. So you can move it in behind trees or out of trees or whatever. But the mortar with the spotter is really good because you can use it to hit the other side of the table that an artillery piece or something might not be able to see. So the spotter does come in handy for the extra 10 points, I think. It's worth it.
It's worth the extra 10 points plus generally 10 points on the increase from inexperienced to regular.
Yes, yeah. It also has a gun shield, so if people shoot at it, it gets that extra protection.
Yeah, the gun shield gives you +1 for cover, as it were. Or
but I think the 10 points for the spotter is. I
shouldn't say for cover because it actually stacks with cover. I believe I'll have to double check that. So it's like being in heavy cover if you put it in like a tree.
Light cover. Yeah.
All right, Craig. Last one. Well, beside myself. Generally playing the British
or Indians.
I would actually firstly quickly go back to the smoke thing. I don't think smoke's worth it at the moment, just because you've only got 1 in 6 chance of bringing that in. And I think that's a round that you could actually blow something up. That said, I think there are ways to fix that. I think Flames of War does a good job with smoke in the game. I'd love to see if light mortars and medium mortars and stuff firing, or that you bring them in just like you would a forward observer's artillery battery. So you place the counter and then you roll to see if it comes in, and if it doesn't that turn, or because you're going to fire for effect, right? So they're going to be like, can you bring it in? Can you do it? The only thing would be, I'd like to see more accuracy with it. If you're using it, mortars, for example, is going to be, if a mortar's using rounds, usually they've got, it's because they're smoking a specific area that they're after, and it's a small area. So typically it's more likely to go where it's needing to go. So I don't think the game really truly reflects how smoke would be used, and I think Flames of War does a better job of using smoke. And the amount of times in
Where it's
Flames
a
of War where
regular. So just to clarify, anybody that hasn't played Flames of War, Flames of War, when you fire smoke, it's just like firing a regular artillery battery. You just have your regular 2-hit. In Flames of War, it's the skill. So to compare it to bolt action, it would be on a 3 plus the smoke lance.
yeah, which I think it should be, but you don't see smoke often. Like smoke was amongst more mortars had it, tanks had it. So I don't really feel that smoke is adequately available,
Represented.
beneficial, representative in bolt action that it should be. I think if we were playing scenario games, I probably would use smoke because it'd be fun to see what it does. But in a competitive nature, I wouldn't feel I'd want to do that. But I think they could make it better. Going back to my lists, for me, it depends on the list that I like the army I'm playing with. With the British, with my African, Italian army, Indian army, I will always take a 25-pounder because it's probably one of the best artillery pieces in the game. For 50 points, I can be an anti-tank gun or an artillery piece.
Because it has
It's
versatile.
yeah, it's versatile, so it's just great. I take a medium mortar as well because I think that's good support.
Do you take a spotter with your mortar, or do you just?
I
put
do
them in
every
exposed?
time because I just don't see the point in it. Because if I knew I was playing and there weren't snipers that often, then I probably would. But typically, more often than not, there's snipers. And not to say that you just then have to think, where am I going to put this? And now I'm restricted because if my opponent puts the sniper in a good place, I'm going to be out somewhere where it's less effective compared to someone with a spotter that opens up the entire battlefield. So I'm not a fan of not having a spotter. My commandos, I've got a medium mortar, but my Soviet list that I'm looking to do has got heavy mortar and has got a Zeiss 3 in it. So and actually at some point I'm trying to think when I would do it in my long list of armies that I've got planned. Either I'm going to do a gun line list where I've got maybe 2 to 4 artillery pieces or mortars. That might be French, it might be Romania, someone that gets a free artillery piece. But I'm using it not to kill anything. I use it for 2 reasons. One, like Sean said, it's a threat thing, going after something that you want to move, sniper, a howitzer, something like that.
Somebody.
Or I use it for pins. Because when I play bolt action, I play for pins. That's my goal. So if I'm pushing on a flank or something, I need to take an objective. I'm using it to try and get pins or to try and get you to go down. Because if you go down, then you can't shoot my infantry that's pushing up.
Yep.
And if you choose not to go down, there's a chance I'm going to get pins.
One other good use, if you're going to run a good line, is if you've got that stubborn veteran squad coming at you.
Yeah.
Those HEs plus 2 pen, those veterans become a little more killable.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I like autocannons as well. But we'll talk about those in a minute.
Yeah, where inexperience would be anything but a 1, veterans become anything but a 2.
Just use MGs on inexperienced,
Yeah.
but
No,
veterans,
and just do the comparison of coming in.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and I think if
It's
there's
really-
certain units, there are some lists. I think you can get 3 of some. Like you could get 3. Usually it's anti-tank, but if there was something that said I could get 3 inexperienced, if I was going for a big dice list, like an inexperienced army, then I would probably go with an inexperienced mortar and stuff, just to because
Stay with
the
theme.
quantity is what you are playing with.
Yeah.
But if I'm more a regular or veterans list, then their job is to support the push that I'm trying to get. So I would take them every time. I don't think there's a list I wouldn't take them. Well,
So-
tank list.
So for
Derek,
me,
can you play more artillery or mortars in your lists?
I
Sorry?
have been playing I've been kind of floundering trying to find my place because back when we played Flames of War, I walked into an American army. I didn't really, and this is no offense to Americans, want to play an American army, but the guy at the time that was walking me into Flames of War, like, you got to try this, had somebody that was getting out, and he had a big American collection. So I ended up with Americans.
The other Derek.
Yeah, flash forward to bolt action, and I walked into another, and by Americans I mean a fully painted, quite cheap, somebody's getting out American army. So, and then I had a bit of Germans, and I'm just not been happy. But lately, I've been building a Japanese army and playing a Japanese army, and I think I found my niche. I think I found my play style fits the Japanese. Up until now, I've always had mortars and artillery. Mortars, I always played inexperienced. I was always like, screw it. Snipers are going to take them off the board, and I wasn't thinking in the fact that if I move it to regular, it goes from 3 to 4+ is what I was thinking. Not if I had it behind something, then I've got a spotter that's always down. So automatically snipers are having snipers ignore down. So they still remove them. So I just couldn't see the value of a mortar. With the Japanese, I've been trying to figure out if the spigot mortar is worth it. The spigot mortar is a little bit different than most mortars in the sense that it does D6 plus 2 pins, and it is only pen plus 1, whereas normally mortars are what is it? Heavy mortar is normally, where are we here on the mortar here? Heavy mortars are normally D6. Is the opposite? I don't know. I can't find it. Anyways, the D6 plus 2 pins, I've been trying to decide if it was worth it. The first time I put one on the table was against Sean a couple of weeks ago. Literally turn 2, turn 1, or turn 1, turn 2. I can't remember if we had a wave coming on. I rolled a 6 and landed it. Next turn, rolled a 6 and landed it again. Okay, so it's paid itself. You get a bit of confirmation bias. Then I played against Matt. Same thing happened. First time I fired that spigot mortar after it came on the board, it dropped a 6 and like nasty amount of pins on him as well. With Sean, it was different. I rolled 7 pins and he rallied for 7. So it kind of blanketed it, like it kind of evened out, but
It took me out.
it also stopped you from using it for a turn. Matt, I think the next time I shot it was a 5+ and it landed. So again, it was like, holy crap, this thing's just a pin monster. I played a game again a couple of days ago against Brad in our league. Never landed a single shot. During our conversation with Pat, I think I said it was like 120 or some points. It's not. It's 70 points. I think it's worth it.
It sounds like it's worth
Like
it.
it is
Just
literally
all those pins.
When I was playing Brad, I took one shot at him. He was in the ruins and he just bugged out of the ruins. It was amazing how fast he's like, yeah, I'm not gonna let you have a 5+ on this. I'm out. And he left the ruins. It was a little bit advantageous for him to leave the ruins until I got my bonsai charge in. But I think going forward, with the Japanese, I will always have that 320 millimeter spigot mortar. Now the difference is I'm saying it's a mortar, but it doesn't take a mortar spot. It takes an artillery spot, and it removes the option to take an artillery piece. I can obviously, with a selector, get another one with the regular regular bolt action reinforced list. You get a second platoon, but then you're paying the second officer tax to get another actual artillery piece. But like you said earlier, Sean, I think playing for pins is what wins this game.
That was Craig, but
Or Craig,
what
sorry, yeah.
what you also have to remember is what the rest of your army is doing.
Yeah.
So it's really good for the Japanese because the rest of your army is
Yes.
getting into their face, right?
I'm moving forward, so you're always, when you're trying to return mortar fire, you're always rolling 6 on me because I'm not
So
stopping.
that's a turn. They
Yeah.
don't get to shoot you if they're rallying. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Have
either
you-
rallying
have you
because I hit
tried-
you, or you're rolling 6s because I moved. And this is something I wanted to talk about because it came up in my game with Brad. Brad, if you're listening, I found the rule where
anybody's listening.
he might be. So when you fire indirectly with artillery, be it mortar or artillery, an artillery piece, you measure to check the range, and you check LOS from the gun or the spotter. The first attempt needs to be a 6, as we talked about, and each subsequent attempt, it gets an additional +1 accumulative unless if the unit doesn't shift positions. And here's the key. When you read the book on the rules, it says if the target unit moves and the entire unit is 2 inches away from the area it was covering, then the shot requires a 6 again. So if you move all your, like, say I'm shooting at Craig, I'm shooting at your Paragurkas. You move each Paragurka 2 inches. Well, the leading edge of whichever direction you moved 2 inches out of the area, but the guys in behind, if you're a cloud, have only moved 2 inches, but they're still within the area that you used to be occupying. Now I'm a 5+ to hit you. You didn't move far enough. You can't just shift each model 2 inches.
Correct.
You have to literally move, depending on the formation that you've decided, if you did a big cloud or if you've done a line. Every model has to be outside of 2 inches of the area you were covering. So if you were a cloud, you're probably going to have to run 12 to get the back guy out of 6 of where, like, to move 6 inches, because that might move him outside of 2 inches of where the lead guy was. So an advance might not be far enough. So you kind of gotta, if somebody's moving, you kind of gotta say, hey, I'm not trying to be a dick, but I just want to put some dice around where your unit was, as this is the area you were occupying, and every one of your guys has to be outside of these dice. Otherwise, you
when you
haven't
say-
moved. So if you just shifted in the
Correct.
runes to the left, it doesn't matter. I'm still hitting you on 5+, or 4+,
Correct.
or 3+.
Yep.
Like,
But when
you have to move.
It's a
When
minimum
it says-
distance. Yeah.
But when it says area, does that mean the area terrain or the template
template.
area?
No. The area your unit was occupying. So, like, if you put your units all with 1 inch and they were basically a big cloud like this circle, which is great. If you're listening to us and not watching us, I'm holding my hands in a big circle. That circle, this bottom side has to be 2 inches from this front side, so it's here. So if this circle is 6 inches diameter, a 6-inch advance is not going to take you out of the area you were in. It's going to go like this. And here was where the top was, right? So you're still a 5+. Now, if you run 12 inches, that bottom guy is going to definitely be outside of that. And if you want to read that, I'm looking at you, Matt. It's page 131.
What? 131?
131.
No, 'cause it's just the way I read it. I thought it was the template area, like the area you're targeting.
Oh, sorry, page 71. It's the last column on page
Okay.
71. And that emphasis is mine. So suddenly when you're using a spigot mortar or a heavy mortar and it's got a 4-inch template, that's a huge move. That's a huge shift, like Sean was saying. When you're trying to move somebody, the bigger your template, the more you're forcing them into the realm of a run instead of advance. An advance, they could maybe still shoot you with a +1. Who cares? maybe it saves you, maybe it doesn't. But in a run, that means they're not shooting at all. And that's a huge shift. So for me, in my lists, I'm not looking for anything less than a 4-inch template, 3-inch depending on points. But I will not run light mortar or light howitzer at all. I'm looking for 3 to 4-inch template to make sure that I shift them.
Thank
So
you.
have you gone the other way? Have you tried the Japanese Type 98, the knee mortar that you could put in
And
the grenadiers?
that's interesting because that's what Sean was saying, or Craig was saying, when he said he wanted to start an army where he's got 2 artillery pieces. That's what I was thinking. It was like running a bunch of grenadiers with 3 mortars in each platoon, which are 2-inch mortars, plus a regular mortar, plus your artillery piece. If you're running a regular reinforced platoon, that can give you upwards
three
of.
more squad of grenadiers.
Yeah, I'm just saying if you just run the 2, minimum platoons of infantry that you need in a reinforced, plus a mortar, plus a artillery piece, you're looking at 6, 7, 8 templates to put down a turn. Because when you're running a infantry that has 3 knee mortars, the knee mortars are allowed to shoot. They're different weapons, so they're allowed to shoot at different targets. So suddenly you're ranging in on multiple targets. If you don't move that platoon next turn, it goes from a 6 to a 5. If you do move the platoon, well, you're back at a 6.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was a light mortar, which traditionally will do less pins. The knee mortar gets D3 because it was a grenade launcher.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played for my last league game. I played a Japanese player, and he had 3 or 4 units, and they had a light mortar for each of his units.
Yeah,
and
that's the grenadier.
they were just causing me problems, right? Because he would just pick and be like, "I'm going to go there," and you're thinking, okay. You start thinking the probability, because if you just think it's 1 light mortar, you just think, okay, it's 1 chance in 6. But when he's running 3 or 4, you're thinking, okay, now one of them is likely to hit a turn, right? So you start to think, and he blew up my truck with one, and there was something I think he hit as well one of my commando squads. So I was like, oh, this is really annoying. So I would consider running the light mortars, because it was so annoying for me because I had to keep moving.
Especially that ability to, if you're running 3 mortars in that platoon, to pick 3 different three different targets while your riflemen are shooting here. Suddenly you've got the potential to put out pins on 4 different things. I'm not going to say 4 pins because the mortars do D3. On average, they're going to put 2 out, and then you're going to get, if you got all 3 of your mortars to hit, and on average did 2 pins, and then your rifles shoot another direction, that's another pin. That one unit put out 7 pins. Now, is that going to happen? No, you're not rolling 3 6s. Are you going to keep that infantry unit stationary for 4 turns so that it gets down to a 2+ to hit? Probably not. But just the potential of having 2 or 3 or 4 platoons firing 3 knee mortars at 6 every turn, one of them's getting through.
Yeah. Just as we move towards wrapping this up, what about? I think, Evan, you kind of hinted at it earlier. Artillery on vehicles.
One of my favorite.
You've got an average, right?
My French list, the Lafley W15 TCC Tank Hunter, which was the 47mm anti-tank mounted facing backwards on a truck. I was doing a bit of research. So mounted howitzers, or howitzers on vehicles, there's a whole sort of subclass of them from World War II, and the biggest was the it never saw service with the French, but it was the I'm not even going to try and say the name correctly. It's the Mortier 280 millimeter De Schneider, which was basically that they destroyed it before it got to the front line when the Germans were invading France. But some of them were repurposed by the Germans. Basically, it was a 28 centimeter howitzer mounted on a little mini tankette kind of looking thing. And I love the thought of those, but they don't have a rule yet. But I would like to try that.
Yeah. How do you use your? Because you've got an Avery in your Canadian list, right? Churchill.
Yeah.
How do you just? What do you do with it? Do you just sit there and do
Not much.
indirect fire, or
I
what?
played one game with it, and it didn't hit a damn thing. The machine guns hit everything that they shot at, but the actual main gun didn't hit a damn thing. So I don't know what I use it for yet. At the moment, it's just a really expensive mobile machine gun post, in my mind. We'll see after some more games with it.
The Churchill one's nice. No,
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
think.
Sherman
I don't.
105s.
Yeah, I don't
Sherman
think Avery.
105s
I've
are
got the.
popular too.
I'd be interested in the future trying like Lorraine Schleppers and what's the priests and stuff like that. I'd like to try and play with a couple of those, but
The Lorraine is good for destroying buildings.
which ones are?
The Lorraine, the Schlepper,
Lorraine, yeah.
one shot, building gone.
Yeah.
Matt lost the whole unit, but then he destroyed a Sherman with a mortar. That was wicked.
That was complete luck. It was hilarious.
No, it wasn't.
No, it was complete luck. It was funny,
Same
and,
for
the,
that.
and thankfully, the
It was
opponent was
skill.
having fun, and it was
pure
crazy.
skill, Matt. I was there. I saw it happen.
Yeah.
Was it a Sherman or was it a Tiger?
No, it was a Sherman.
It was a Sherman.
So he rolled up, and he was using the pintle mount to pin a bunch of our guys, and I thought, I'm just going to fire my mortar just to give him that threat of it could happen and make him move. Well, I rolled, I ranged it, and I hit. Oh, sorry, that's Flames of War. I hit, and then I managed to penetrate because he had the top open using the pintle mount and blew him up.
That's nice.
It was
and
like
you did the same, Kev, didn't you?
Yeah, an Adepticon. I blew up that Malta or something, whatever it was, with my mortar.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, the martyr with my mortar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they work.
There's probably more we could talk about and probably talk for another hour or so about it. But I think that we've covered a lot of it. I mean, there's still multiple launches, which I think I do like the idea of multi-launchers. It makes your opponents spread out because their units spread out because they don't want to, if there's 6 units close by, odds are you're going to hit one of them. So I think multi-launchers are cool, but we could probably check that out in a future one. But I think.
Can I just do one thing?
Yeah.
Because it's a little different. I just wanted to cover some of the rules for artillery, for limbering and unlimbering artillery before.
Oh yeah, okay. I never limbered, so I don't know what the rules are.
So unlimbering is easy because most people, if they're gonna start to move it around, they're gonna literally just move your tank. So unlimbering, you give the artillery the run order and place it anywhere within 6 inches of the vehicle. If the vehicle has received an advance order, if the vehicle ran or has the run order because it ran last turn, then you got to wait another turn. So there is a difference. And the reason this comes into play is because of limbering. The vehicle has to have either no order or the down order. And it has to, the artillery has to begin its movement within 1 inch of the vehicle. And because, depending on the artillery, light medium can move 6 inches on an advance so they can get to it. heavy and super heavy can't move, so the vehicle has to move itself within 1 inch of the artillery. And then you give your artillery the run order, at which point, like it says in the book, it says the rules say use the infantry limbering or infantry mounting and dismounting rules. So the rule says that, like infantry, they have to make a run order and move within 1 inch of the vehicle. Super heavy and heavy artillery can't move, so they have to start within 1 inch, which means your vehicle, like I said earlier, has to be 1 inch away. Then the gun is placed behind the vehicle. Now, the caveat to this is the vehicle can't have moved this turn, right? So if you just move, like if you get an order dice and you move your vehicle beside the gun, and then you get another order dice and you give your gun the run order, it can't limber. It's got to be next turn. So you might as well take the shot or whatever you're doing. Next turn, the vehicle can advance to where it wants to be and unlimbered. If you run your vehicle, you can't unlimber your gun. So there's some little idiosyncrasies there for your gun's limbering. Light and medium can move the 6 inches to the gun, because on an advance order they can move 6 inches. So if your vehicle's within 6 inches, good enough. Super heavy and heavy, they can't move on an advance order. So you actually have to park your vehicle beside them. And like I said, the vehicle cannot have moved. It had to have had no order or a down order beside it when it moves. Some of the other interesting ones are like the difference between firing directly at a building and firing indirectly at a building. When you fire directly at a building, it's just a 3, unless you're a vehicle-mounted howitzer or HE weapon, in which case you move, it's a 4 because you get +1 for moving. Because you're just firing at the building. If there's something in the building, and everybody knows like the unit in the building, right, Craig, is what's shot at, but you're firing at the wall of the building, so it doesn't get cover modifiers, even though there's a unit in there. But you have to pick the level that you're firing at if you're firing directly. And basically, it's either going to be a 3 or 4 to hit. And then, like, so if the unit's on the first floor, you're obviously firing at the first floor. If it's on the second floor, you fire at the second floor. There is no template. That is the one time you don't use a template. You just automatically hit anything on that floor. The other thing is, when you hit the building and you hit everything on that floor, you use the damage that you have for your gun when hitting buildings, which ranges from a D2 to 3D6. So a super heavy is going to do 3D6. Heavy is going to do 2D6, and then light is going to do D6, and a light mortar is going to do D3, maybe less. So there is that difference there. And the reason that takes effect is, like, if a super heavy hits a building and it's rolling 3d6, on average it's going to get 11. 10 hits knock the building down and destroy everything in. And that's interesting because usually when you place a template, you roll the number of hits or the number of kills for whatever's under the template. If you've got a squad of 15 on the floor of that building that you hit, you roll 3d6, and that's how many that you hit. So even though the template fits the building, you don't necessarily get everybody, or you get everybody 3 or 4 times over. Because if it's like maybe there's a spotter in a building, you roll 3d6, you get your 11 on average. You roll 11 hits to kill that one spotter. But if you got a unit 15 and you roll 11, you're only rolling 11 against that unit of 15. But if you roll over 10, the building comes down. Everything in that building, dead. Now, compare that to indirect fire. You still need your 6, next turn 5, next turn 4 to hit. The difference being, when you hit the building, you roll d6 on a 4, 5, 6. It blows up on the top floor. On 4, 5, 6, it blows up on the next floor, and you keep doing that until you get to the base floor or the first floor. In which case, 1, 2, 3 doesn't exist. It automatically blows up and it kills whatever's on that floor. Again, you still roll your hits against the building. So if you're a super heavy 3d6, you hit a 10, all of them are gone. So you don't even have to roll how many guys are on that table. So I thought that was interesting because it's an interesting difference, but there's still that same roll the hits on the building, 3d6 hits, 2d6 hits. There's that chance that you bring the whole building down. So back to you, Craig. I rambled enough.
There is one other thing which is which I would recommend you actually go to. I think it was about 2 episodes ago on the Snafu guys, and they cover the rule of recrewing artillery guns. And so there is a rule where if you lose someone from one gun and they're within 12 inches of another gun, that you can actually send the crewman from that gun to the other gun. But there is a whole thing about veteran, because the gun becomes the majority of the skill level and whatever. So
that's the one thing
go
I don't
to.
understand. So do you know that? Like if I run an inexperienced crew from an artillery piece to whatever, whether it's a mortar or an artillery piece, do they now become inexperienced? Or do they suddenly take on the guns position? I would think they were inexperienced because they're inexperienced.
Yeah, there is a rule that explains it. I can't remember off the top of my head, but if you listen to that snafu where they go through it and explain it, it's actually quite good, and even they confuse themselves after a little while. It's just like, what is happening? So, but it turns out in the end, the summary is it's not worth it because you're missing out on rounds of fire. Right. So, right. Well, that's good.
Though, I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop you because I mean, the Japanese, they can get extra men on some of their stuff. So, I see what you mean because you put the run order to get them to go the 12 inches. You've lost that shooting for that turn. But
it's one or the other. You either shoot or you run somewhere else.
Yes.
So you don't get the shooting that turn, but if you run the next turn, you get 2 shots. So you're back to positive, depending on which round. I guess that's the difference. Because if you go on turn 4, you don't get a shot, but on turn 5 you get that shot plus this one you just gained. So you're back to even. Go to turn 6. You're now +1 shots, but if you do that on turn 5, so you really have to decide the turn. What turn is it? Am I going to get my numbers back?
But like the guys in Snafu said, it actually would be better if you just remove the rule. Because it's a rule that nobody uses or would really ever use, and it's just complicates something that is not needed.
And the other thing you could think of is you're denying if you're scoring the scenario on dice killed. By running over and remanning that, you've taken a dice back from your opponent. So there are reasons you could do it. I understand what you're saying. It's not worth it, but I could see the scenario, like the corner points where it's like, this might be worth it. Like, I'm up by 1 dice. I need 2 dice to be a major victory. I'm going to man that gun and I'm going to give up the shot.
I mean, maybe I think you'd have to be really plan out that strategy in case of that specific scenario coming up. And
cornerstone events. I could see that it could work.
I think it would be more impactful in a scenario.
Yeah.
Where I need to man up my team. Cool. Well,
are there restrictions to that? Like, can a mortar crew run over to an MG?
It's just artillery teams.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Artillery team.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, oh my gosh, if you started doing mortars and
just people running all over from crew to gun.
What's happening? We've got a counter next to this guy, so I know where it's going.
I bought this mortar, but I didn't buy the crew because they're going to run there later.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Sorry, you modeled them all on one base, so no, you can't.
What I would love to do though is talking about tokens. I would love to get. There was a player when we used to play Flames of War, and he had these little outlines of little red guys, and he
Drew.
would put them down.
I know
Yeah,
exactly what
Drew.
you're talking about. Yeah.
And he would put them down across the table, and I'm like, I want to do that for bolt action. I want to show where my guys have died in the journey, right, of doing whatever I've needed to do. So
I'll make you some.
yeah, I'd like some. That would be cool. You could probably sell them as well, because that's the kind of thing people would like.
We should put a dice hoser store up so I can and I can sell some of these reaching over out of the view of the camera. I don't know what just happened. I don't know if anybody else saw that, but if you saw that, I'm really sorry. I got some of those templates that I've made where they're 4 inches, 3 inches, 2 inches, 1 inches, and they tell you all the. Now that we're talking about artillery, I mean the camera's not really picking this up. I'm really sorry, but they're basically their templates that you can use. So
no, exactly. Yeah, we should talk about that.
maybe I'll make you some dead templates too.
Yeah, I'd want some dead template, just little outlines of guys I could put down. Okay, awesome. That's I think that was a good focus on artillery and such. And next one we'll look at flamethrowers, which Sean will love, because Sean loves flamethrowers coming out of Keystone Cop cars.
That's right.
But before we do that, we're going to talk about painting and what we're doing and such. But one of the things is that for Adepticon, we'll be talking about that, and we're hoping to have in the next few episodes, because we started to ramp up. We are only 4.5 months out from Adepticon 2024. And there's still lots to do, and there's a big game and stuff so that we're going to be playing. So we've got going to try and get Chicago Dice TO back on, Steve, who we interviewed in our episode. I think we're going to get a guy called Dave, who's organizing. We're playing against a big Stalingrad table, so we'll have a chat there. And then there's some folks on. We'll start getting updates from people from the teams on how the armies and the terrain is coming on. Fortunately for me, I've handed over all my responsibility to Matt for my partner. So I would say I'm dodging that, but I've got to paint mostly a Soviet army for this big battle. So
it was a fair trade for me because I did not look forward to painting those Soviets.
But what I do want to find out, we had in the last episode, we were talking about what people were going to paint between now and then. And I had written down what everyone was doing, but I can't seem to find it. So, Derek, you put your hands up. What did you do?
I fucking did what I said I was going to do.
What?
I did it. My Staghounds for the list with Sean and the doubles are painted up to decaling, because I was worried about I don't have the decals yet. I'm still actually I was talking to Matt about stealing some of his, and I just might do that because I think I can hand paint the Canadian symbol and just use all the tonnage that he wasn't using for his Commonwealth. I think you're using British, but I'm using Canadians, which doesn't matter. It's all Commonwealth.
Yeah.
I also said I was going to paint 2 units of 15 militia for the Japanese. I didn't, but I did. I painted faces and uniforms of 87 individual soldiers for the Japanese. I now have to wash them and highlight them instead of doing what I said I was going to do. But I figured because I tripled what I said I was going to do, I should be good.
Oh, that's good job.
Hey, shut up, Matt. For me, this is fucking good. I fucking painted.
Yes.
I painted, dude. I painted. I put paint
Yeah, I'm impressed.
on brush and brush on miniatures. Shouldn't that score some points?
Kev, you made a big mountain out of painting a wolf. Did you paint the wolf?
Oh no, I didn't paint the wolf, but the wolf was only part of it. I was going to finish off the tank for my nephews from.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the big Red Skull tank
Yeah,
thing.
so it's
Come on.
basically painted. I got to glue it all together though. But my one nephew was over the other day, and he saw it and he said it was wicked. So he's wicked. He's totally happy with it. So I'm taking that as a win because he's like, oh, that's all. And then he said, Dad, why can't you paint like this? And I laughed because my cousin was here. Because he does what's the Superman game? Batman, Robin, and all that.
Marvel something or other. No, not
Marvel Crisis
Marvel
Protocol.
Crisis Protocol.
That's what it's for.
Marvel Crisis Protocol does not have Superman.
Whatever it's got, it does.
Right in the name, Marvel.
It's Kevin, and he got it kind of close.
No,
There's a DC game and there's a Marvel game, and they're both compatible.
Sort them out. And in this case, it is me sorting them out.
Matt, what did you get done?
None of it. None.
Oh dear.
No, that's
Life got in the
right.
way, and then
we asked what you did, not name a location in Canada.
no. So well, after a couple of our games, my list for next week changed quite a bit over and over again. So I kept reworking it and then ordering stuff, building stuff for that. Because you dumped your doubles list onto me again, I had to order some new parts for that and started building that.
I actually did you a favor though, a big favor, because you ended up only having to paint 3 tanks rather than 1,000 points of Soviets, mostly infantry.
But they're Churchills. They're big. No, it did help, but I managed to get them, and I got the right marks for Dieppe, and should be okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Evan.
I wasn't at the last one, but I did assemble 1,000 points of Canadians. They're base coated, and I've painted 10 of them so far.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So,
And
How
you're
many of
doing
the-
veteran Canadians, so not. So
And how many
Canadian-
points are the ARV?
Sorry?
290.
And yeah, how many points of that is the ARV? AVR? ARV?
Three.
Whatever it is.
No.
The engine is pronounced
Cover
average.
your ass,
But yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, 290.
Wow.
Thereabouts. Sean, usually the painting
I
champion.
did paint some
Yeah,
things.
He's probably finished 3 full armies.
Oh, this is what I said I was going to paint. I've got them all here. See, here's the
Yeah,
big
you said
pig.
you were going to paint your AOS,
It's all done.
and you said
Then
you were
we've
going to
got the
paint our
Shatterpoint. Yeah, so
Shatterpoint, right?
Here's the Witches of Dathomir, and
Ooh, nice.
we got some BattleTech models here. This
That's
is
right,
the.
yeah.
I was going to bring them to the tournament tomorrow, but I've decided to bring some different ones. And then we've got the light artillery howitzer for the Italians.
What? Okay, he
And
did it then.
next weekend. Yeah. So
Well done.
What
So
tournament
that's-
is tomorrow?
You gotta hold that closer to the camera, Sean. Sorry, because you're a little picture on the big screen. So those are even smaller. Right up to the camera. There you go. Look at that.
What tournament are you
Nice.
playing in tomorrow?
tomorrow's
BattleTech.
BattleTech at Torchlight.
Nice.
It's
Fuck
3 2-hour rounds, Alpha Strike, so it goes quick, fun. So my favorite game at the moment. So.
Saturday,
Well, I pop by
Saturday.
tomorrow and have a look.
Just
Yeah, might do the same.
Derek, what are you going to paint for between now and the next episode then?
I want to finish my SSKI engineering vehicle for the Japanese.
Paint your what?
The SSKI engineering
Okay.
vehicle, which is the flamethrower vehicle for the Japanese. And I'm not going to lie, this Saturday is our tournament, and I want my entire army painted for that tournament.
Nice.
So I'm going to put it down.
Yep.
For those of you watching from home, that is not a Derek thing. This
Yeah.
should be new.
You know, though,
I am going
if you
to
paint them-
this army, and we are going to find out on Saturday if I am 2 inches or 8 inches.
Well,
you know what?
Derek,
An
if
easy
I
way to
remember
paint
though,
them.
what we should do, actually, because is your norm, we should just drive around in a car for 8 hours while you paint. Right?
That would be
Yeah,
so
you get it through.
helpful if you guys would do that for me. just like
Or-
We'll just take
just
shifts.
drive me around, stop me at the next house, drop me off into their vehicle. They can drive me around.
That's right.
So Eric, tomorrow I need to drive Chloe to Vaughan, which is like what, that's 70k. So you don't want me to pick you up? You can.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I work till 1, so if you're
Yeah,
going
it's
after
at like
1,
2 o'clock. Yeah, I'll pick
okay,
you up. It's fine.
perfect. I got my.
But it's through Toronto, so it's like 4 hours.
Well, let's go.
Yeah, you could also paint them at nighttime and just do them black with some gray highlights and stuff because it's dark. You can't see them.
I would love someone to do that.
Okay, so for the viewer or for the viewers or listeners or whatever, I have a Japanese army that is 1,000 points that I have not got the engineers for. But in lieu of the engineers, I'm painting 4 15-man militia squads, 4 5-man. Even though for this list I won't need 5 men, I'll need 1 5-man and 2 4-man night infiltrators, 3 20mm spigot, a SKI engineering vehicle, a sniper, a lieutenant with 2 infantry, the spotter for the spigot mortar, the Kempetai, and a mule. I still haven't got a mule, and I will have one. So that is my goal right now. As of right now, for my list, I only need 2 of the militia. But I need the engineering squad of 9 with a flamethrower because I just wanted to say fuck you to everybody because Japanese bonsai is so fucking broken, guys. Like,
I hate it.
Fucking stupid. I bent Brad over for it, and I waited till turn 4 because I've done it on turn 2, turn 3 on Matt. The Japanese are just.
But to be honest, Derek, though, to be honest with you Japanese, you've actually not played any good players yet.
Ouch.
You played Brad.
Feel
He's
that
not bad.
flamethrower burn.
I mean, Matt, we'll just ignore Matt. But Brad's not bad.
Shots fired.
Hey,
Shots fired. No, but you haven't.
Just so you know, in our
played.
game, your only mistake was you advanced. You should have never advanced and given me that much distance that you closed for me. If you're playing Japanese, just stay on your fucking back line and shoot. Who cares?
See,
if it's
for me,
long range? Who cares? Just don't advance. Oh, they're advancing onto the objective. Doesn't matter. Do never move within 12 inch of the Japanese because their troops are so cheap. They will just fucking throw them away.
So Matt, to make you feel a bit better, you're going to beat Craig in the next tournament.
Well, I'm not in the next tournament.
He's not in the next one.
Exactly. That's why you're going to beat him.
I could play myself first.
I'll come in a higher standing than Craig.
Higher standing, higher ranking.
Because of the buy.
There's no buys. No buys. We ban buys. But I think that you've yet to play people who consistently play bolt action all the time and have played in several tournaments. I think that they are geared and know how to play against Japanese. Like my British would love to play your Japanese, right? Because you run at me, and my Gurkhas run at you, and I go, okay.
No, I don't run at your Gurkhas. I go.
I know, right? So you have to
I
change your
go into
tactics.
ambush against your Gurkhas.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Okay, so who did we just wrap up? Oh, so Derek, that was you saying you're going to paint your Japanese.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Full Japanese army painted.
Kev, what are you going to do other than your
Andrew.
wolf? What are you going to do?
Oh yeah, he's sitting right here. I'm gonna try and finish all the Stalingrad's buildings. I've been getting a good.
That's a good point. Actually, I need the Stalingrad buildings because starting in December, Derek and I are playing in a Case Blue Stalingrad campaign. So, yes, I do need those buildings.
Yeah.
That's
Sean
awesome.
building an Italian army.
Is that just
Is that
you
it?
two, or is that a something through one of the stores?
It's through Ron, who's a bolt action guy at the store.
Right.
But you're welcome to join in if you want to. I mean, it's
Yeah.
typically Thursdays or Fridays and a couple of times a month to play
Okay.
through the campaign book. So
Don't
if
have
you're
to be there
interested,
for one, just whatever one you want to go to.
yeah, if you're interested, I'll let him know, and you're more than welcome. Like, it's an open door.
Yeah, we'll see. It
Yeah.
was, yeah.
Yeah, you just need either Germans or Soviets or minor nation. So
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so you're doing the Stalingrad buildings. How many buildings is that? Is that 3? 1. That's a Stalingrad building, then, not buildings.
Wow, that's
It's
pretty
1,
neat.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10
Lots, is it?
pieces with the building on it.
Yeah.
To be
Some of
fair,
them
it is fairly large.
and
It is
some of them
fairly
are
large.
big.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see. Evan, what are you going to be doing?
Finishing the Canadians, and then deciding on either painting some buildings or start on the Adepticon tanks or the doubles
You're going to
tournament.
finish your Canadian army in 4 weeks. That's between
Yeah.
now and the next episode.
Yeah.
Okay,
Your wife picks
awesome.
them up and throws them in the closet. How would you not do that?
Sorry, what? I can't hear.
Said your wife ties you up, throws you in the closet. How would you not be
Yeah.
able to paint it up?
That's a whole different other podcast.
Yeah, that's a different episode. That's Dice Hoses by night.
That's,
Yeah.
I won't be here for that one.
Spotify.
Dice Hosers after dark.
Yeah. Matt, have we done you?
Take 2 on what I was supposed to do last time.
Okay.
So all the Canadian infantry for Dieppe for Adepticon.
Okay, and Sean. Okay, what's Sean's new challenge going to be? Because apparently he's cruising through on easy mode at the moment.
Well, I'm going to do the first Special Service Forces for Adepticon. Not the weapons teams, because I don't have them yet. I got to buy them still. And I'm only going to paint them. I'm not going to finish the basing, because I'm not going to do that till Derek and I get the display board all set up. So I'll do that.
Are you, hey, Sean? The display board.
I'll do.
You were starting to work on it. What's it looking like?
Oh no, I didn't really get too far on it yet.
That's a good.
So my goal is just to get into it before we get into, before I end up in some shoulder surgery and have my arm taped up. These guys. So this is Song of Ice and Fire, Lannister Cavalry. I'll get them done. And so what's that? That's so Lannister Cavalry for Special Service Forces, and these 2 BattleTech mechs. This here is a spider, and this is a thug. I'll paint these 2. That should keep me busy, but just in case, we'll toss in this orc right here.
So
This
Sean's
orc right here.
tweaked it up to medium level. We'll see.
This is an Age of Sigmar orc here with a little oh no, that's not this one. This guy. This guy here, he like has a little squig that he uses as an anvil, and then he's got this hammer and this pair of tongs. So
You need the colossal squig. Just say it.
there.
I love it.
That'll be it.
Sean's
That should
moving up
keep
to
me busy.
easy mode. Evan's on the I'm married, I have no chance mode, just like I do. Kevin's like doing hey, I got some buildings on board. Matt's like, hey, let me do what I said I would do last week. This is we're the
ADHD. Leave me alone.
Nice. Awesome.
So this seemed like the best place to insert the Pat Hutch interview that Craig and I did with a fellow bolt action streamer in the area, as well as apologize for the fact that my audio was really soft during the episode, and I apologize for anybody that had to like turn up the volume, turn down the volume. Anyways, without further ado, I'm going to start our interview and then cut us back into us saying goodbye, and you will probably not hear me because I am so very, very soft.
And welcome to another interview of the Dice Hosers podcast. And we'd love to welcome, I've been wanting to get this guest on for quite a while, and the stars have aligned, and we have got Pat Hamill to join us from Over the Top Gaming channel. Hey, Pat, how you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Absolutely. So I'm joined with Derek, of course, my conspirator in
Nine-fingered sidekick.
Yeah, nine-finger sidekick, so to speak. And we are going to grill you, Pat, about your channel and what you've done and where you're going and what plans you have. I know I've watched many of the videos, and I'm looking forward to the next bout, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But before we get into that, can you just tell us a bit, first of all, about who you are, not hobby-wise, first? Who are you?
Who are you?
Who am I? This is a question I've been asking myself for over 50 years now. But, I grew up in Montreal, Quebec. I'm an Anglophone, not French Quebecer.
Well, that's why you're on here.
I speak the language. I'm from there, with a pretty heavy accent. They're not, the French population would certainly have a bone to pick with me by saying I'm bilingual. I struggle with them every day at work, but yeah, that's where I'm from. And, just grew up on the kind of the northwest side, and wound up moving out this way, back and forth. A lot of people in Montreal back in the late 80s and throughout the 90s, Anglos moved out of the province and then moved back and moved out again, and then that's just become part of who I am. If we want to discuss that is sort of an expat, but I found my home here in Ontario and met my wife Denise out here, and we've got our family out in Ontario now, and managed to move around in terms of work and what have you, and don't know how interesting any of that is, but
I think it's always interesting to understand try and get a glimpse of the person behind the hobby. Because I think a lot of the time in the community, we present ourselves as, that hobbyist, and this is who I am. And I think it's great to have that understanding of that commonality. But I think it's nice to know that people live regular lives and where they're from and what they're doing. Like, I didn't know you were from Montreal, and an Anglophone at that, but I didn't know that. So it's interesting just to understand and get an insight into that. So, and I'm assuming you ended up in Oshawa, where you're based, through work. Then that was the reason.
We moved back out this way back in 2011 from Montreal, and my in-laws live like closer to the west end, like north of here. So it didn't make a lot of sense for us to move out to the west end of Toronto when family was out here. So, I actually worked in the west end of Toronto for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And did that commute through, like, from the Oshawa area out to North York, which anybody who does that will tell you is like a prison sentence.
Right.
You know, struggling with that traffic in the morning on the 401. It was like an hour and a half minimum to get to work every day, an hour and a half back. That was on a good day without any rain or snow. And so that was miserable. So I lucked out, you know, finding work out this way eventually. But
Nice.
yeah, so I could rant on that for hours.
And
That's pretty much everybody's way of life out here. Is if you've got as soon as you got to commute, it's a minimum of an hour and a half. It doesn't matter where you're going.
yeah.
Exactly. It's the scourge of Southern Ontario.
Yeah.
It's you know,
Now, one of the cool things about Oshawa, of course, is the tank museum that's that way, right? So, have you had opportunity to go visit there?
yeah, I actually my youngest daughter was enrolled at the gymnastics school that's just on the property there. So when I was driving her, you know, I would always see there's a couple of vehicles they have outside all the time.
Yeah.
But on one occasion in the spring several years ago, they had their show on, and they had, I don't know, there's maybe 20 armored fighting vehicles on site that they had.
Yeah.
So I got a good look and photos of you know, of everything, and a good up close look at all these vehicles, and it was really it was quite something else to see. Definitely.
Yeah, I do want to make the pilgrimage to Oshawa. I've been there several times, but I want to make the pilgrimage to Oshawa on Remembrance Day in the next few years, because they have the convoy, of course, that go from the museum to the cenotaph in Oshawa, and they've got all the military vehicles. So I think that would be great to go see that. But it is good going to the museum and seeing them drive around. Like it brings the sheer size of them. I mean, they've got a Sherman there, of course, and you just like, wow, actually, you're just one big hunk. You think I mean, it is big, and you look at it and you think it's solid, but then at the same time, you read about how easily they were destroyed.
Oh yeah.
And you're thinking, oh my gosh, right? So it's you think you're protected, and then it's like, no, not necessarily. But
yeah, and to see it up against some of the, even, you know, not modern tanks, but the more modern ones that they have on display there.
Yeah.
From time to time, and then you see, you know, like a Patton tank, and you figure, okay, how can you not be protected in this thing? But you know, the reality of what's coming at it, and the advances in armaments and whatnot, and you know, just to get that perspective is definitely something you want to do. You know, if this is an interest, you know, and it's hard to say hobby, right? You know, when you're up and close, especially with Remembrance Day coming.
Yeah.
You know, and certainly when a lot of the veterans from the Second World War were still alive, you know, I always found it a little bit, you know, I'm not going to say difficult, but it takes a moment to sit back and really think and reconcile your hobby versus, you know, what you're trying to depict.
Yeah.
And try to get around that, you know, and to really put that into perspective in your mind, right? You know, as a simulation as opposed to hobby, right? And, you know, and to get, you know, like to laugh, you know, and when you're throwing dice, and to get excited about things. And the reality is, you know,
people died.
People were dying, right? You know, and in a lot of cases, a lot of, you know, family members that you know, that we have, you know, that risked their lives and gave their lives, and you know, the reason why we remember, right? And it's a different thing. It's one thing when you have that sci-fi giant robot thing, you're playing BattleTech. You know, there's a certain level of detachment that is always going to be there, but it's something else when you're assaulting a trench, right, in Western Europe, and you know, with your little plastic figurines, right, and then, you know, the same day perhaps, or even the same weekend, when you're going to, you know, as you say, like a parade or whatnot for Remembrance Day, right? It's definitely, you know, I'm not going to say it's difficult, but it's not easy, and it's something that needs to be reconciled, you know, in one's head at an early age, you know, when you get into that. Yeah,
no, I agree, and we could probably do a whole episode on that conversation itself. Absolutely, I agree with that. I think one of the good things that the hobby does bring in that regard is contributes to an understanding of the history of what happened, and so many people like that are in the community have a general understanding of what did happen, when you talk to anybody outside of that community, I think people. Like, so I was playing a video game earlier today and with a group, and they got to talking about Germans and World War II and stuff. And I said, Stalin was a bad guy as well. And they were like, is that the Soviet guy? Like,
Right.
Like, they're not sure. And you're like, how do you not know who this guy is? Like, so, whereas I think in the community, you would not really have that. I think there would be a broader understanding of that. So I agree. I think definitely that there's, that there needs to be some reconciliation around that subject, the hobby and remembrance and such. But I also think that it's great to see a broader base of historical understanding, which I think in this day and age is becoming, unfortunately, a rarer commodity.
It is, yeah, and back to who I am, right? Like, it's hard to say, the chicken or the egg. I mean, because like a lot of young kids, I played with toy soldiers and whatnot, but I think that caused me to start reading the history books, and I started reading up on history of World War II, and and I also was buying Sergeant Rock comics right at the same time, and really trying to get an understanding. And my grandfather, was in the RCAF, right? And it was something he didn't want to talk much about. And when I was a youngster, and but I would always see his medals up on the wall, and just to try and get that understanding. What happened? What is this great big thing that affected my family and other people's families so much? And then the hobby component sort of came after, I guess.
Okay.
So it's a little bit easier to try and reconcile that reconciliation in the mind that I'm talking about. Whereas, it was the historical component and the historical understanding, and the understand people's suffering and whatnot came at the same time.
Yeah.
Sort of, that's kind of where I'm at in terms of that, level of interest. I mean, I have other interests too. I like listening to, I like heavy metal. I like going out with friends to see shows, and there's a whole lot of other things that make up who we are, right? And like you said, we all have this common ground, and that there's this interest, and there's another person behind there.
No, exactly. That's great. So, going back to you started to talk about moving from historical into the hobby. What was that? What was your hobby journey? Like, where did you start, and what systems were you playing, and how did that develop and grow?
Well, the hobbying really started. It evolved from playing with army men to building model kits at a young age. Certainly pre-teen, like 10, 11 years old. I was buying model kits when I could, with and building a Panther tank, a Tiger tank, and some, like, assuming that the plastic that they came in, that was what they meant to be. And I'm going to put some camo on it, and getting some tester's paint and just painting stripes on the bare plastic, right? But my brother, I have an older brother, and he was into modeling as well, and then just sort of trying to. We didn't have the internet in those days, and certainly didn't when I got into hobbying. There were no hobby stores or clubs that I was going to. I was buying my models from department stores. So there was really nobody to talk to, right? You just bought the model, you looked at the color on the box, you looked at the paints, like, am I supposed to paint it with these things? I didn't understand priming and whatnot, and without getting into all that. That's kind of where it started.
Right.
And then a desire to once we did start to talk. It was all word of mouth in those days, and you met people that were into the same kind of thing, and it was very slow and organic. Your hobby group, let's say, and it kind of started out that way. And it was the desire to move from pew 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 to how can we agree on something here that makes sense to play army men, right?
A common format.
Yeah. And I think it was moving into Dungeons and Dragons. I was introduced to that from my uncle, and then going to find the miniatures at comic stores, and some of the comic stores had some Avalon Hill games, and that's when I saw Panzer Leader, Squad Leader, the old bookcase games and figured, okay, that's 100% what I'm looking for. It wasn't miniatures, but it's got some numbers, there's dice, it tells me, these things can go, this is perfect. And, the rules, of course, were a little complex for a 12-year-old kid, but I gave it the best shot that I could. And then it was at those hobby stores, you start to meet people.
Some of those book games, though, you almost needed a doctorate to play them. Those
I still do. I mean, I whip out that squad leader rule book every now and again, and I look at it and say, I can't believe I read this whole thing.
More than once.
Right, exactly. But that's the way it was back then. And then it was slowly but surely meeting people and finding common games to play, and then getting into BattleTech. Certainly historical was a lot harder to get into for a young kid at the time.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted the fancy sci-fi stuff, and then Rogue Trader hit. And I'll never forget seeing that plastic box of Space Marines and saying, wow, here's a value that I could get behind, right? It was the only plastic kit that they had at the time, but I bought it and, said, we've got to try and play this now. And that's how the, Games Workshop was able to get their hooks into me. But I played a lot more BattleTech at the time than Warhammer 40K, which it eventually turned into.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the hobby journey and how it started. And I played Micro Armor at the time through high school. Like my first miniature experience with World War II gaming was Micro Armor.
I remember that, but I don't think I ever played it.
Yeah, I don't think I've come across that one.
It was GHQ, I think, was the company that was behind manufacturing those, and like the scale is like 1/200 or whatever. Like they're this big, the tanks and vehicles and whatnot, and infantry squads were, it was all lead and pewter, but at the time it was lead. But it was you would have 20 guys or 15, 20 man squads, whatever they came in. Yet they had 10-man squads, but it was all just dudes standing shoulder to shoulder on parade, basically. And you did your best to paint those up, and that was a squad. And the rules were incredibly complex.
Yeah.
For the tank rules were, again, it was something I was trying to look at as a 15-year-old kid. I was like, wow, this is crazy. And believe it or not, Rogue Trader with the rule book that was this thick at the time was easier to digest than that was. So, it was an easier migration, I guess, to get into the fantasy gaming. And then I found Epic 40K when that started out, and the original Adeptus Titanicus.
Yep.
And I played that into my 20s until I just got out of hobbying for a little bit. I was in my 20s.
How did you? So, I don't think yet. I've yet to be proven wrong, but so far, most roads I've come across, the hobby leads to Games Workshop.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody has their journey then within Games Workshop. So, how long do you think you were in the hobby of Games Workshop before you discovered Bolt Action?
Oh boy. Okay. So we're going to do like a big fast forward on this one. And I think I got back into my hobbying was board games for the last, I don't know, 15 years or so, almost 20 years now. It's been, board games. That was me getting back into the hobby.
Right.
And I would always look at miniatures and think, okay, I'm going to, I think I got back into painting miniatures just before one of my kids was born, and I wanted to do 1/72 scale World War II. So I just bought a bunch of model kits, didn't have a rule set in mind. I ordered one from the UK, but I wasn't going to a gaming club or anything. I was just painting everything up, hoping to find somebody to play with. And then after, I just got wrapped up with kids again. So that all went into a box and it stayed there. And it wasn't until, and I was playing board games over the years, and it wasn't until I was in the States in 2017 where I went to. I was in St. Louis, and I went to what's the big online store out of there?
Wasn't that Fantasy Flight owns them? They've got that. I think I know which one you're talking
Well, they're out of Minneapolis, but
Oh, yeah,
there's
I'm
there's a
thinking
distributor,
Tri-Cities.
a big game distributor out of St. Louis, and the name is escaping me right now. But I was able to go to their warehouse, and I wanted to find some Tide of Iron, which was a game that I love that game. I like playing it an awful lot. It's just trying to find people to play it. But it kind of, if you were to look at it, I don't know if you're familiar with it. But you have like plastic discs. These are your squads, and you have different types of figurines you put in them depending on the squad you want. You can put officers, regular soldiers, elite. It's a great system. I love it. But I was looking for some stuff for that game, and I saw some 40K stuff on sale. They had the starter box on sale, and I was talking to somebody up here about getting back into that game. So I called him up and said, "Hey, are you into this? I'll buy the starter kit. We can split it." And when I was doing that, I saw all this bolt action stuff. And I said to myself, wow, this is like, that's what I wanted. I mean, the scale is perfect where you could paint them up, like, what is this? But again, didn't have anybody to play with, had one person I was talking to about 40K. So I said, you know what, I'll just stick with this and I'll start painting this stuff up, see where it goes from there. And that's what happened. I just started with, I got back into 40K, and it wasn't until I became really pissed off with 40K, which was about a year and a half after playing it again, where I realized, now I remember why I stopped. What was that bolt action thing again? And it was actually, I think it was Peter, who does the Stalingrad campaign, who's been playing the Germans. Peter was the one who said, we should look at bolt action, because I met Peter through the group here at Critical Hit when, I was very active in the 40K community there. And Peter was like, we should play this game. And I said, yeah, I saw that in the States and I thought it was fantastic, but, I don't know anybody up here who's into historical. And it as you know, it's hard to find a group and to get a group and all that business. But he said, yeah, check out the rules and whatnot. And then it was maybe, I don't know, 6 months more. We just discussed it. And then it was about 6 months later where we decided, let's really do this. And that's when we abandoned 40K completely for the most part. I tinkered around. I think I did a couple of battle reports and still played a little bit once I started bolt action, but then I just gave it up completely. The new edition came out where they changed the rules to the army. I had, again, for the umpteenth time, and I just, decided to go completely into bolt action, more or less full time.
Yeah. And what I think is great about bolt action, which I'll get your insights to why how you like the rules and stuff, because obviously you like the models and that historical perspective. I'm interested to know how you like the rules in general. I think one of the things I like is the fact that Warlord games that makes bolt action are the original creators of Rogue Trader, right? And the early Games Workshop. And then they've kind of moved on, and now they said, right, we're going to make all these different games. So they kind of Games Workshopified stroke Hollywoodified, I think, historical gaming, and brought it into more closer to the mainstream of gaming than it ever used to be. And so which I think has been interesting. But from your perspective, so you've moved from 40K, you've got bolt action, you've got bought some of the models and such, and started to kind of meet with friends to play. What did you think of the game when you were like overall? Like how did you find that, and then how do you play the game typically when, aside from the channel, which we'll move on to in a moment, but how did that evolution of of now I've got these models, I'm going to get my hands on the rule set. How do you find the rule set, and then how did that evolve over into what you play and how you play bolt action?
So it was actually the rules that grabbed us first and grabbed me was the rules. I mean, I always had a draw towards historical World War II gaming, whether that, I play hex and counter games still. As I mentioned, the Tide of Iron or Memoir 44 for a quick, kind of pick up dice and beer and pretzel kind of World War II. There's a bunch of games I like playing, but it was the rules that really grabbed me. The dice pull from the bag, the possibility. I love alternating gameplay. That's why I don't like games where I go, you go with the whole force. I think that's a flawed mechanic. And games that try to work around that to make, and create rules to help that system are doomed to fail. And you wind up with this rules bloat on your hands and just very strange situations from a gaming perspective. I mean, we are talking about throwing dice and pushing plastic soldiers around. I understand that. But there are good ways to do it and bad ways. And I thought the dice pull was a very good way because the odds are, I mean, you've seen it happen when we play. You get 4 dice in a row to start the turn off. That's not going to happen all the time. And even the player that is pulling the 4 dice, there's probably an element of in their mind of their strategy that's being thrown off by doing that also. So it's not like you could plan to do that, and it's not like you could plan to face that. You have to plan for everything.
Yeah.
So it's that randomness, that fog of war kind of randomness and chaos of the battlefield that the dice pull represents. And I really like that. And I think that the implementation of that is, from an idea that they came up with and the implementation, the reality of it worked. And I thought it would work when I heard about it, when we discussed it, and then actually to play it, I think it works great. So that's the first thing that grabbed me. And just the fact that a dude with a rifle is a dude with a rifle. You have your veteran, your inexperienced, and your regular guys. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
A slight rule change.
Game wide, not just army wide.
Exactly. It's, a guy with a rifle is a guy with a rifle. And I mean, like, history has bore this out. You have your slight variations, you have your differences in training. And there is a little bit of a difference, and we can get into that after. The scenario book play versus the tournament play.
Yeah,
there are some differences in there, but they're not jarring. They're not, glaring at you. There are a couple of things that are a little bit wonky, right? But I mean, as human beings making rule books, things. Some things are going to be a little bit different and possibly don't work well as other things. And, I think as a group, the community works around those pretty well. You don't see a lot of dispute in the community arguing. Everybody knows that, Gurkhas are a little bit overpowered. They're, flamethrowers on tanks, and we all kind of understand, there some things that were not historically accurate that work too well in the game, but there's not a lot of those things. There's like maybe 1 or 2. So there's not a lot of space for abuse.
Yeah.
The community is good at policing itself in bolt action, I find. And it's hard to tell where that came from first. Is that just the type of person that comes? Or is that the rules, the heart of the rules are meant for fair play and not for, finding those little things to
Get the gotcha moments.
Yeah. So that's really what drew me into the game was that first, and then the fact that, I get to paint up soldiers again at a decent size scale and play them in a game was the icing on the cake for me. And I've really enjoyed playing the game. I have to say, I like playing a lot of games, but in terms of, capturing the whole hobby, this one has really pulled me in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think there's everything you mentioned. Yeah, I agree with that. My favorite thing, number one thing has to be the dice ball. Like it's just such a simple concept, but it has such an impact on the game. And you might be pulling those 4 dice out in a row, but you might not want those 4 dice out in a row, or you might want those 4 dice in a row. It completely changes depending on whether it's a deployment, reserve deployment, or it's a turn of playing the turn. So yeah, I do love that. That's my number one thing.
I like the fact that it forces you to think on your feet, because you don't know what's going to happen. When it's you go, I go, and you got the army that's set up to bolt across the 4-foot table within, on the first turn. If I go first, I'm going to be there wiping out half your army, and you only have half to fight back with. So the best you can do is maybe take out half my force, but I'm already up, right? Like you're going to have to think about everything that's going on, because when that first dice comes out and it's not yours and you were gunning for it because you wanted to do something, now you maybe have to react, or maybe he did something you didn't think about, and you can still use your next dice as how you want, but you've got to constantly the strategic and the tactical are constantly evolving during the course of the game. Whereas I find in a lot of the you go, I go, it's my turn. I can set up to do whatever I want because there's no interruptions. Right. And I just love that aspect of the dice pool that gives you. Is you can't just go and get the net list and do these combinations and win all the time, because the net list doesn't work if you can't get your order of operations in the order you need them before your opponent does, and it's never going to happen that way. So I'm not playing somebody's ultimate list that they've made for Army X in game Y. I'm playing my opponent, and if he can outthink me, and dice are there, that's always going to be a factor. Like you can have the best tactics and the best strategy in the world, and if you're rolling nothing but ones, you're not going to win. But a good opponent's going to tell you that. He's going to say, you know what, I saw what you were trying to do, and I see that the dice weren't helping you. I'm really sorry.
And that's reflective of reality. I mean, there was more mud on your side of the battlefield than, or the ground was just sloped in such a way that you couldn't get your plan going. And it's just those little differences.
And that's where it's played out with.
And I can't stand a game where the most important die roll is the first turn initiative roll.
Yeah.
In a you go, I go situation, who goes first? Who gets to get their plan off and running right away? And there's no reaction to it, and that's just not the way it should be.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was laughing with Matt the other day, Craig, because we were remembering our first game, bolt action, and we got it all set up. We had the train out. We had our armies ready. We'd picked our reserves. Then we're looking at each other for about 2 minutes going, how do we start this game? Because we're so used to rolling a die, and we were like, we know we don't roll for initiative. How do we do? Because it was just like it just flew right out of our heads. Then we both kind of looked at each other and went, "Oh yeah, we got the dice bag. That's what this is."
It's so completely foreign. You missed it in the rule book, and
and it's just one of those things. Like we're flipping through the rule book. Like, how do we start the game again? Because it's such a different system than anybody else has got out there. That any of the games that we played, a majority of them are you go, I go, or when I was playing Infinity, it's you go, I react, but you keep going, and this, I just loved it. I love the dice is what makes this game.
Definitely.
So Pat, I think now that we kind of understand how and what the pull for you for bolt action is, why did you then decide at some point to have a channel about you playing it? Like how did that come about, and why, and such?
That evolved pretty much along the same trajectory as the evolution to move to play bolt action, because the channel kind of grew out of this idea. Just before, I'm going to say, but it was before the pandemic. I was just feeling like, that I've got back into painting, building models, and the hobby just kind of grew. outside of the board gaming. And I just felt like I wanted to do more with the hobby because on the side I'd always messed around with graphics as a hobby, different programs on the computer, and just looking for another avenue to play around and be creative. And I thought, this is I could do board game reviews or whatnot, right? And that'd be just another fun kind of hobby. And it was kind of awkward to get into that. And at the same time, as I got into painting and miniature gaming again, I thought, I stumbled upon battle reports and people discussing games online and stuff. And I thought, well, I could, try to do that, right? It was just going to be a hobby type thing. And it was really kind of awkward to start out, right? Like, you don't know where to start. I didn't even know what volume to speak at, and setting up a camera and everything. And the whole thing was just kind of funky when it started. But then the pandemic hit and I had a lot more time at home. I was working from home like a lot of people. And I figured, I was working in the same space as my hobby space, like my desk and area was there. So when I was done work, boom, I was home. I was home from work really fast, and I had time to try and work on that because I had nowhere else to go. There was really nothing else to do, especially in the early pandemic era. So I think it was, within 6 months, I was starting to film some Adeptus Titanicus and 40K stuff. And, just kind of learning, how to, with all the editing and different cameras and whatnot, and trying to get all that down. And then we made the switch, I made the switch to, wanting to play, bolt action. And we kind of made a shift, and Peter did as well. And I thought, this is the game where filming this would really work well, because the presentation is there, right? So, and the terrain building, that's another part we haven't really talked about yet with bolt action. For me, a big part of the hobby is the terrain building. I just I want to play this game, but I can't play it without the terrain. Like, I'm not interested in playing bolt action with a cardboard box representing a farm and, some cardboard cutouts. I mean, I've done it, I'll do it, just to get by, but I don't want to. I really want to have the terrain. So, another part of the hobby, the 3D printers, that's a weed tent behind me, but it doesn't have weed in it. It's got 2 printers in it and a filter so that I could run them in the house and filter the air and whatnot. I got another printer over there, and I've got a K1 Max that just came today on the floor. This is another hobby is the printing. And I thought, this would make a great presentation. So we kind of rushed into that, right? It was like, let's print up a bunch of stuff and let's get this going right away, because I had the practice from doing some of the 40K videos, of just trying to, as with getting the podcast up and running, there's a lot of new technology to learn, and, nervous moments and whatnot. You're putting yourself out there, right? And it's a little bit daunting. You've got full-time job, family, you've got kids and whatever, and it really is a part-time thing. And it takes a lot of time. But bolt action was very rewarding in that sense. I really like doing the Adeptus Titanicus stuff because we approach that the same way. Terrain, it's a pretty fun game. I like the way that game goes as well. But the bolt action really, we thought, okay, how fun would it be to do all of the scenarios? Let's try them out at least if they're fun, right? Like, if they're no fun, what can we do? But Osprey, they put together a great product. Those books are phenomenal. I was always a fan of their books, just their historical books beforehand. And I think they do a really good job with these scenario books, and the scenarios are a lot of fun. Yeah. So it just kind of took off from there, and just the evolution of trying to, look at the next map in the scenario book. And that's, we can get into why there's been a break on the channel in terms of, what we're trying to film and produce. because every time I look at a scenario, I look at the map. Okay, how many buildings do I have to make? I got to make some mountains. I got to make some hills, some trees. There's a river, a bridge, whatever, and I'm trying to up the game every time.
Yeah.
The first couple of scenarios, we're kind of proxy some things, and I want to stop doing that. I mean, I don't want to reproduce every scenario exactly, but to bring the level of hobbying and production of all the terrain to at least a level where I can, the bridge that I'm going to be using in this scenario and that scenario, I want it to look nicer than the first one, so to speak, right? So, I don't know. It's been a fun adventure just to try and reproduce the scenarios from the scenario book, both on the terrain wise and with the armies that we're doing, and to bring different cameras and learn that side of the hobby as well, and to try and up that game if I can, more and more. I don't know. Did I get off topic?
No, you're good. You're good.
You're kind of keep going.
Sometimes I ramble.
Well, it's interesting because there's a lot of like when you ask somebody like, why did you start a channel? Well, I started for this reason. But these are all like you're bringing in all the things that average person, like when we got in, like you said, when we got into the podcasting, all of a sudden I'm thinking about, timings and things. And now I'm trying to up our game with each new episode. I'm trying to put backgrounds now and do things like that. And, today struggling to get everything going and hoping it's working type thing. They're big steps for people like you and I and the other people out there that we're just amateurs trying to learn this as we go, and there is a huge learning curve for a lot of this stuff. So it's interesting to see that, like, you don't just have the learning curve for the electronic side of it or the PC side of it, but you're also learning how to make these 3D printers work, how to, and then finding time to paint. So it's interesting stuff to know that there's somebody out there that's willing to jump in with both feet and hope for the best.
It's been a journey, and I mean, I've been blessed. I have a family that it lets me do my thing. They're all hobbyists as well, different types of hobbyists, and so I've got support there, and I've been blessed to be able to dive into this hobby, to the different parts of the hobby, right? And it really is like, I mean, I love gaming. That's the first thing, right? Just playing a game and tabletop games and board games and miniature games and being with other people, right? I played a lot of video games. Back in the day, I grew up with an Atari and a television, a ColecoVision.
Those aren't games. If you look at today's games, those are not games.
but I went straight through all that into PC gaming, Red Alert, and Company of Heroes, and played all that stuff, and then just kind of stopped in 2008 because the interaction level just wasn't there. I was spending time away from human beings, I was spending a lot of time playing video games, and I just had enough. And I guess my reaction time isn't the same as it used to be. And you just start getting smoked by all these kids, and it was just, okay, then you're just playing by yourself, and what's the fun in that, right? I mean, it was a good release from the day job, come home, play some Company of Heroes, or maybe play with my brother or something. But I started to miss the community aspect, right? So that's another part of, I guess, the channel, right? Having the channel is just reaching out to people and getting conversations started, right? Getting, people, I mean, you get some flack, right? There's, online, you're gonna hear about it when you make mistakes and you get rules wrong. And, we did a lot of that when we started out because we kind of rushed into bolt action, right? But there's only so many mistakes you can make, right? We've started to iron them out. Now we're at the point where we just make the mistakes that everybody does that you don't catch. Yeah. Right? Like you'll forget something on one turn, and you both do it at the same time because you're both thinking about something else, the next die roll, whatever. So that's just average.
And what a lot of the viewers forget is you've got 7 other things besides the game going on. Like,
exactly.
Where's my camera angle? Are you in the right place? Are the dice going to fall into this camera? Like, so it's hard, but I don't know if you know Ash. I met Ash a while ago. I went on his channel, Gorilla Miniature Gaming. And,
Okay, yeah.
And he said something, I'm paraphrasing, but it was very much like, you just have to let your channel know at the beginning of every game, like, we're having fun. We're going to get rules wrong. Feel free to point them out. Just remember, I don't care. We're
Yeah,
laughing.
exactly.
We're having fun. And there's going to be mistakes. Nobody has ever played a perfect game.
Right.
Like,
No,
nobody.
exactly.
It is
It's
not
never
happening.
happened. It's
So
never happened.
when you finish playing your perfect game, then you come and tell me all the rules that I've got wrong.
Right.
And that kind of
it's-
stuck with me.
Yeah,
Like-
that's great advice. And I mean, I wish I would have heard something like that early on, right? Because you get very self-conscious. You're putting something out, you're hoping people are going to like it. And, you know, the
And
views.
it feels more like they're
trickling in.
nitpicking it. And they
Yeah.
truly enjoy it, but it feels like they're nitpicking it.
Yeah, and there are some people out there that do. That's just
Oh, yeah.
what they do. And online, I don't know what it is, right? But
Everybody's a tough
most-
guy online.
yeah, exactly. The keyboard warriors are out there, right? You know, but you want that constructive criticism, but you know, some people maybe they don't realize, you know, that it's past that.
Yeah.
This is no longer constructive. You're being overly critical. Like, you know, we are amateurs, and I guess, you know, like I said before, trying to up the game and have a more polished and professional looking product. But at the end of the day, it's not a full-time job. And I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't put up a video in months. So I put up a little update yesterday because we're getting close to being able to start rolling out the Western Front things. But it was a big deal. I mean, you know, Peter's got a young family, and I remember when my kids were all young, I got a vasectomy at one point. I was like, I can't handle this. I got three
I've had
kids
two.
at home. Two vasectomies.
Yeah. My wife made me reverse it so I have kids, and then I got it done again so I wouldn't have any more.
Classic.
There you go,
Classic.
right? It doesn't matter.
You used your CP reroll on that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you know,
Sorry, just train wrecked you right there.
yeah, no. Been down this road. Yeah, that's funny. So yeah, so he's busy, you know, like I
Yeah.
totally get that right now. You know, hands are full with kids, so I have to make a shift. I mean, we did a few of the Marvel ones, Crisis Protocol, and I think they turned out pretty good. You know, production wise, and you know, the guys, you know, the games were good. I'm not playing that game though, so I mean, I've played a couple of times, but it's not. I've really got to kind of focus on what I'm playing.
Yeah.
Because of all the different hobby components to it. You can't spread yourself out too thin because nothing will get done. So, you know, I still intend on doing those, but with the bolt action, it became like, okay, I've got to shift to the Western Front here, and I don't want to do it half-assed. So there's been a lot of terrain building, you know, because Italy and France are completely different.
Yeah.
You know, and I painted up a Canadian army, and now I'm trying to finish up the Germans, and I've got a US army, but I'm not going to wait till they're done. As soon as the Germans are done, we're starting in on the soft underbelly, and then I want to start sprinkling in the tough gut.
Oh, right. Okay.
You know, and just start pumping these things out on a semi-regular basis because the editing process, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
I could probably, you know, I'm my own worst enemy when it comes to that, because it's been a hard sort of process to kind of figure out where and how much detail, you know, you want to leave in this, right? You know, like I could cut out more. I guess what I'm trying to say is what sort of moves am I going to cut out?
Yeah.
You know, is at what point does it just become a highlight reel? And do I want to do that, or do I want to actually show the gameplay, some of the strategizing, some of the rules, like, or am I just going to show the most crucial, important roles, right? So is the viewer going to be looking and saying, how did that squad get up there, right? Or I didn't know you were planning on going there, because all of a sudden you just skipped 2 turns of what that squad was doing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a fine line. So I've experimented a little bit with going, you know, short, right? And I think the next best thing I can do, I think I've narrowed it down to like an hour and 15 minutes. It's probably unless you're in the 9-turn games, because there's a bunch of those, and those are going to go almost 2 hours regardless. But the next step, cutting it down, is going down to 40 minutes or 45 minutes, but then you're cutting out a lot of stuff.
Right.
And that just kind of interrupts the flow of the game. So
how long does it take you to post-process if you were to sit down start to finish? Because we all know we can't, it's an hour here, hour there type thing. But
well, you see, that's like, I've been able to split it maybe in between 2 days, but preferably to do it all in one day, because you forget the flow.
Yeah.
And how you're editing that game, like the pace that you want. And you can wind up with a product that's edited one way on Thursday and another way on Saturday. If you're not careful to, your mindset too, right? Like, when you're watching the game and you remember how the game went, okay, I know what's coming up, and I know that this part slowed down a little bit for us. Even though you're editing out all of the rules checking, when you put the camera down, you're checking the rules, or when the game breaks up, it's different when you're trying to edit it and you're remembering how it went. You may have a different approach from day to day, I guess is what I'm saying. So what I try to do is just do the opening and ending scenes and all the graphics and all that crap in the intro on one day, and then just edit the whole battle on another day. And that can take like 9 hours.
Yeah.
8-9 hours, even longer. I've gotten better at it. And I can certainly get it down to, 7-8 hours, but I can't rush it. So I have to set aside a whole day. And when you're working full time and you've got a family and, you're trying to do different things, to say,
somewhere.
Yeah, every Saturday I'm going to be doing this is, that's a hard sell.
That doesn't fly.
Yeah. Yeah. But like I said, the family's very supportive, because, ultimately, I would like to be doing a lot more hobby stuff full time and start to squeeze down the full time work stuff, if I can. Right, the kids are getting older. They're starting to look after a lot of their own things. Both financially and time wise, they're just not available a lot of times. So I mean, life is evolving and changing, and I would like to be able to do this more often than not. Getting there is a different story, but all that being said, once I start up, and the bolt action is the main thrust of the channel right now. That's where I'm getting the most attention.
Yeah.
People are actively watching, and I see the results on that, and it's been good. And I'm hoping to eventually get to a point soon where I'm able to put up at minimum 1, maybe 2 a month. And with shorter updates and shorter videos in the interim.
So what are some of the challenges that you, behind the scenes, that you have, aside of like family and time, like are the programs take a while to post process or to do the processing, or is it something that happens on an ongoing basis? Like it sounds like you're got 3 or 4 printers going for your terrain and your painting. So what are some of the challenges that you're running into when you're making going into Italy, I guess, because you've already finished Stalingrad and you kind of got some of the bumps mound out.
We haven't finished Stalingrad. We're only at 11 or 12 right now. We've got another 12 to go.
I haven't done this podcast yet. I'll get a note from Craig in 2 days saying, "How's that podcast doing?" I'm on it.
Yeah, well, so I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, right? And it probably sound more complicated than it is, but just the way my brain works, right? So, there's learning. I have a lot of familiarity with the software just from Illustrator and Photoshop. And when I moved over to learn Premiere Pro and After Effects for this, it's the Adobe suite is very similar, the way all of their software works.
Yeah.
The menus are where they should be and everything. It's just a matter of, figuring out, this is what I wanted to do, going and looking online, finding, and this is the wonder of the internet age. finding somebody else who's done what I want, and okay, there it is, practice it and get it going. And it's trying to remember that, because when you get away from it for a month, or even, I think you alluded to that as we were opening up the podcast.
Yeah.
If it's been a month, like, wow, what did I do last time to get that? I mean, our brains are so crowded with day-to-day living, that this stuff gets crowded out. So it's trying to, keep it fresh, learning these things with the software. Okay, this is how I do this. This is where I want to do that. And oh yes, I had to adjust the audio on this camera, or the color for this camera, and there's just all little tweaking, because I've got right now I'm running 6 cameras, and they're all
the GoPros, right?
2 of them are GoPros. I've got one that's a DSLR. The main camera that I use is a DSLR, and that's hooked up to it's wired into, I've got, because it runs on batteries, I've got batteries with a wire, right? And also the mic is running with a wire from that camera. I've been able to get around some of that lately, but I've got another 2 smaller camcorders, just kind of just for that I can point to different parts of the battlefield. And then recently I've added another camcorder, a 4K camcorder, and I'm installing another mount for it. I've got 2 mounts that I've installed for it, so I can position it to different spots depending on what we're playing, where the action is on the battlefield. And that was another thing to learn. Excuse me. I mean, I think the first, when I started doing battle reports in general, I had 1 camera, and it was hard sometimes to catch all the action. Just from where I am with the terrain, there's stuff going on over here, and I just can't get there. Yeah. So I would miss that, or I would miss this, and it's a learning process. So adding more cameras was really a plan to just be able to catch anything, because you never know where the battle is going to flow.
Yeah. If it's behind that building on your opponent's side in the corner.
Yeah.
And you're kind of loath to hand that expensive camera off. Can you film that right there? And then he doesn't really know what he's doing with your camera anyways, because it's
and that was not part of his game plan whatsoever, right? Yeah. So to what you were saying earlier, trying to play the game, and I'm also trying to figure out, okay, am I catching this?
Yeah.
And then quite often I'll have to okay, we need to stop. I have to remind myself, and I don't do this enough, okay, stop, put the cameras down, and go look at all of them and see what they're catching, because one will be, I think it's catching the action, but it's just catching the tail end. You can see the bases of 4 guys that are about to get into a hand-to-hand. So I'll have to go and adjust the camera to make sure it's catching it. It's in the right vicinity, but it's not catching what I want it to. But it's better than it was before, where I was totally missing that. Because you think that there's no way we're going to be fighting in this part of the map. There's no... Yeah. Why did he deploy there? Oh shit! He's trying to win this game, right?
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to nobody's played a perfect game, but what a lot of your viewers are forgetting is that you're the cameraman, you're the director, you're the producer, and you're one of the players.
Right.
You're wearing a minimum of 3 or 4 hats, while your opponent's just got 1 hat on, for the most part. And I'm not saying he should be picking up the slack at all. I'm just saying that when those comments come in, people forget that portion. It's not like I got a whole studio crew back here because I'm a multimillionaire and they're all
right. Exactly. Yeah. I don't need to work, and I'm doing this full time, because if I could do this full time, we would have a different product by now, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But
it'd be going out daily.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm happy with the way it's turning out. I do wish I could do this all the time, but the guys that have been on the channel have been really good about it, but there is a learning curve for them too, and it's just about how and when to talk.
Yeah. Where to roll the dice.
Exactly. 100%. Where to roll the dice, how to roll them, and just how, because in our natural course of discussion when we're playing a game, we're kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to edit something, it's okay, you started off your sentence talking about this, and it needs to get here, but for some reason we meandered a lot while we were doing something else, while we were rolling some dice. So you kind of have to coach people to if we could just say what you mean to say, roll the dice, and then we can do the small talk after. The banter is great, and I think that's one of the good parts of the channel, is that I like to capture the banter that we have going on, and it makes it fun. It really, you get an idea that there's a game and guys are having fun, right? Because that's why we do this at the end of the day. But there are times when I've been editing where I'm like, wow, I really needed to catch the, it's kind of the whole phrase, the whole thought process with the die roll, and it took too long to get there. And there were some other things that were added in that we didn't need to do, or maybe something was said that I need to edit out. Do you know what I mean? So
they're succinct when you want them to be, but they're not succinct when you need them to be.
Right, exactly. And for the most part, people understand that, but we all kind of fall into our habits and whatever. And I'm guilty of it as well. And it's been a big learning
social
curve.
game.
Yeah. And it's been a big learning curve for me. It's like, okay, this is a 3-hour game. I've got to edit it down to 1 hour and 15 minutes. I don't want to miss anything, but I want to have fun. So that's been, bit of a learning curve as well, right? So there's, let's take, for example, I mean, that aside, back to the original question here, what needs to go into all this, right? So there's learning the software, which I've been pretty, was already fairly handy with, and I know where the resources to go to online to find what I need to improve on things or to make it do what I want. So there's the editing process, but when I look at a scenario, okay, these are the forces I'm going to need. These are the forces that so-and-so is going to need. I've got to paint these guys. I don't have, let's say, these naval troops or whatever. So right away, I've got to go and source out and paint 10, 20 naval troops and get them on the go. What kind of building am I going to need? Okay, I've got to print up this. I got to print up that. And I'm going to need some hedgerows. I'm going to need some trees or some orchards, which, I've got to make up for, the Italy, right? There's a lot of orchards. So there's all of that needs to happen. So I get home from work or whatever, get the files, print the stuff up, get the printers going. And then there's the process of,
and that works 100% of the time.
Oh yeah.
Those printers are all plug and play. Let me tell you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It does exactly what you want 100% of the time, all the time. Like, so there's all that troubleshooting too, right? Getting parts for the damn printers and I'm a bit of a tinkerer anyways. I kind of enjoy it, but at times it's annoying because I've got to, I'm trying to feed this channel and grow the channel because it's fun to watch it grow and to watch people enjoy it. So you have to keep feeding it. And when there are things that just kind of start falling apart on you, like printers, for example, or, you fall behind on your painting. And I mean, we had the wife and I bought a trailer out in the Ottawa Valley, and then the ice storm hit while we were on vacation and destroyed the trailer.
Oh,
yeah. So right away, that just life is another one of those things. So now I've got to go deal with this for every weekend for a few months. I had everything set. Now I got to go redo everything. So that's when I decided to just slow it down.
Yeah, then you got to come back and remember all those little things that you haven't done for 2 months.
Exactly.
Work.
Exactly. So I just mentally took the pressure off because, there's the terrain, there's the model building, and, getting, the new cameras, set and trying to get that going. And I have to find another supplier because the last supplier I had contracted for some dice trays. And like for some large trays for the side of the board, whatever game we're playing with the logo on the side and dice trays and some trays to put, the wounded units and whatnot. And I was going to have cameras, just on the dice trays. So we have one spot where we can roll and I can edit to capture those. And that's still the plan. But, the guy just decided to take off and not do it for me. So now I've got to find somebody else to do it. Thinking of doing it myself, but that's a whole design process. And so all it takes is just, I mean, more stuff, right? I mean, I'm interested, but it all takes time.
Yeah.
And so I just took the pressure off and said, just let it be what it's going to be. let the channel simmer, and thank goodness it's been alive. People are still watching, even though I haven't put any content up, but now I've started. And hopefully the next battle report will be up probably, I'm hoping next month at the very least.
Yeah.
If not this month, because we're very close. Like I'm close to getting everything done, and at least for that first one that had been, because I chose the first scenario in the book, Soft Underbelly, and just said I'm doing this one. So I looked at all the terrain I had from Stalingrad and everything else, and I was like, I don't have any of that crap. I've got to make it, a hilly terrain that's like 4 feet by 3 feet, and and Italian houses, and all kinds of Italian buildings, and so okay, gonna do it. So it's been a process, and I'm happy to have it done, and I think it's going to look great. I'm really looking forward to doing it, but it is a process.
So one of your questions, because you're talking about going into soft underbelly, and I would have thought, as I don't want to say a Canadian, more of a North American, what made you choose Stalingrad instead of starting with like D-Day or the Western Front or even Africa or Italy, as you're moving into now? Like the Eastern Front is so foreign, and I know it's foreign, but I mean, whenever you look at the history books in any of the libraries or the stores, we generally, as a society in North America, concentrate on where we fought. What brought you to start with Stalingrad as opposed to those more known battles or scenarios, or campaigns that would maybe resonate more with North American viewers?
And that's a great question, because you would think, if I'm trying to get this channel up and running and off the ground, you'd want to go with Band of Brothers, right? Like, what are people playing, right, online? Like you said, Craig, you're playing in Stalingrad, but most people playing the game are probably in the hedgerows of Normandy, storming the beaches. There's probably 80% of the fan base is playing there at any given time. And it's like that for most games.
Yeah.
And initially it was a completely personal decision. Being a history buff, that's the Eastern Front, where, the more titanic battles occurred there. The actions were a lot bigger. The sizes of the operations were more grand in terms of just the amount of people, personnel and equipment that were taking part in any of the operations. It was just, and a lot of people don't realize that. And I didn't really even care about that, because the Battle of Stalingrad just, it just has a place in my mind as, just from the standpoint of human suffering, and everything that went into it, and just the amount of people, and just the drama. If you follow the story from beginning to end, it blows me away every time, right? When in First World War, when I read, loads and loads and loads about the First World War, and Verdun always had a spot for me in terms of interest. Just how that turned into a castle or a cauldron, on on the Western Front, and everything that went into that, and just the sheer amount of attention and resources that were poured into an insignificant battle for the sole purpose of draining the enemy of blood. And that's what Stalingrad was. And just the fact that, the challenges that they had in terms of getting equipment in there, the house-to-house fighting, the street fighting and all that, it was very personal for me to want to recreate that. And that's why, the next battles that we have lined up are some of the more dirty, kind of grand, what you think of Stalingrad battles. And, I have most of the terrain made for that. And, I've been dying to get it out, but just haven't been able to. But that being said, now I know that shifting to the Western Front, if I do it properly, I think that'll increase the attention in terms of viewership and just, people that are going to be drawn in and sort of be able to enjoy or appreciate, some of the stuff that we're trying to do and those very classic kind of battles and from those scenario books that I'm sure, Warlord does a better job of moving those than Eastern Front or out east and whatnot, right? So I'm looking forward to that as well, just to see like how much people are going to be drawn towards that, right? And ironing out some of the kinks earlier on that we experienced on the channel and having this be more of a polished product, I guess, is kind of a side effect, because it was purely personal to go to Stalingrad. I wanted to do that. 100%.
So you alluded to earlier that you were about 12 in and you had another 12 to go of Stalingrad.
Yeah.
Right. So are you taking a break and then coming back to it?
Whenever Peter's ready, basically, he's just too busy right now. It's very hard for him to get away. And I understand that, you guys have had kids, right? You know what it's like.
Oh, mine are still young.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, mine are older. Yeah, I get more freedom.
Yeah. My oldest is the same age as his youngest. So 12 and 6, so I'm locked down for a...
Well, 12 and 6 is a lot different than, 2 and 6 months.
Yeah.
That's a different ball game altogether.
Yeah.
So who's going to be Peter's replacement or is Peter being replaced in the Northwest Europe?
Well, we're going to have hopefully a rotating cast of characters. Right. And I've tapped Chris. I don't know if you've met Chris Lilly. He's been at a couple of the critical hit tournaments and whatnot. He'll be joining me for the first mission on Soft Underbelly, and then rotating. A few others have expressed interest. Right, I'm kind of leaving that open. But for the Stalingrad, we're kind of locked in right now. We've got to settle this dispute, Peter and I. He's up on me right now, and I'm not happy about it. So I've got a score to settle with that man. So we're going to be leaving that one. But I want to.
Is that why he had kids, so he could get out of the?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to have a word with the wife on that one. So I want to kind of flip back and forth between the other books as well, and maybe just not be so linear.
Yeah.
This go around, maybe but follow the scenarios in a linear fashion, but not the book, so to speak. Like I would like to get into some tough gut ones, but start from the first one and move on, and go that way if I can, right? So I mean, if there's an interest from you fellas to play a scenario, by all means, we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely, anything.
Yeah, we discussed that in the past, right? Like, come on over, and participate. That's great, right? More people from the community. I mean, obviously, Army needs to be completely painted. There's no gray stuff, right? Like, I think I posted one of my first 40K battle reports. I had a couple of primed units in there that I was working on at the time, and I've since removed that because I don't want to show that. Because that's so indicative of that,
it
scene.
Really, like, it's one thing to play a casual game with somebody that's unpainted, but it really shows on the video when they're not. Like, I find it like, and I'm not the best painter, I'm not the fastest painter, and I'm probably the biggest in our group at fault for showing up with something partially if painted. But if it really distracts from in the video, you really notice, and you lose all focus on the game. You just keep seeing these models that stand out, but not for the reasons you want them to stand out.
No, exactly. Yeah. And as we were discussing early in this game, it's like you don't see that in bolt action, like when you see somebody show up with some stuff that's unpainted, it's because they're working on it and it's going to be done soon. I've never seen like the primed army show up and then the same person has another primed army, where just the focus is not, that part of the hobby is very much important. And it's hard to focus on a game of bolt action. But
and unlike other games like 40K or AOS, or where you have to chase the newest and greatest. This comes back to your comment. A man with a rifle is a man with a rifle. So you can play with one army for a whole year if you wanted to. You're not going to be any better or any worse off than after the 2 books that came out this year, or 3 books before you bought your army and after you bought your army. That doesn't really affect your army, nor does it make somebody else's army so much better that you have to stop this project and start the new one.
Exactly.
And that's the great thing about it.
Yeah.
I probably one last question, which is, how do you find, I suppose there's 2 parts. How do you find the difference between playing campaign versus tournament? Like, what is it that is different for you and you enjoy? And then secondly, how do you find the list building for campaign? Because I know some of the campaigns will say, you've got to have armored cars or you've got to have these things, but then some of them are just, you've got to take points from this theater selector. So how do you go about doing those 2 things?
To me, this is another area where I find bolt action shines. Are the campaign books and the scenarios in them. The scenarios are, I've yet to run into, there's maybe one, where things were kind of wonky, but it's still, I would have to play it again to see if any sort of imbalance was in the scenario. They're quite well balanced in terms of the game was fun. You didn't know who was going to win. And I like the historical components. Like it's a historical battle and they're trying to represent with the units that participated. And this is the thing. We can't look at the units that exist in some of the scenario books and the theater books as like, that just gets added to the army. No, they're in there because that just happened to be what was available at the time. Yeah. And the fact that they were able to get the job done like tremendously is reflected in the abilities that are embedded in the unit. And they're game played for balance, but it's not something that was easily recreated across the army and could have been done for the whole war, per se, right? And you have to look at it like that. So when you're playing a battle in Stalingrad and you're being told you have to take 2 units of civilians, it's because they were there. They were thrown into the battle historically, and you've got to make the best of them. And what they do is they try to balance with what was available in the order of battle at the time. The Germans were trying to rush this unit in. The Soviets were grabbing whatever they could from the countryside in terms of manpower and equipment. And they mash it together and make this scenario that's quite fun. And it doesn't play completely nuts. Like, you have the T-34s rolling off the factory. So, they have a couple of abilities. I can't remember off the top of my head, what it is that are detrimental. They had to be inexperienced.
Oh, they did have the scope on it. I think one of them is you don't have a targeting scope on the gun, right. So it doesn't have this far range when you shoot.
Yeah, there was a range impediment and that sort of thing. And I find that very thematic. It was fun, and it made the game fun. So from that aspect, that's my favorite part of the game, is playing the scenarios from the book. And the tournament play is fun. I like it because that's a way that you can get 10, 12, 20 people in a room together and play the game.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think that the list building and whatnot, that to me is not the best part of the game. The min-maxing the list, and there is that fine line, excuse me, where you have the theater books and the special units that pop up in some of the scenarios that are in those theater books that don't belong. Yeah. In your list building in a tournament. Yeah. And I think that line and that distinction needs to be made. Yeah. It needs to be there, just because this unit existed in this battle and it did really well, and that's being represented in the scenario they're in, it's also being counterbalanced on the balance side with the other units. And if you just want a completely asymmetrical, or sorry, a completely symmetrical game where every thing is completely, even on both sides, well, you have chess for that. And so I think there's room for improvement in the game to make the distinction, because I think it's blurry at times. You get some of the theater lists, guys are bringing things like, different units and whatnot that are clearly trying to min-max the game. And I mean, that's part of playing in tournaments. People are going to do that, versus just straight up using the reinforced platoons and only what's in there and that's it. Right.
Yeah. No, we're actually, our dice hoses are actually, because we've been participating in more and more in tournaments over the last few months. But I think recently we've been looking at that we'd like to do a campaign and do it from because it's something that actually I think we really like, but we've never done.
Yeah.
So I think it's a route that we're thinking, it'd be nice to. I think like we're looking at Western Desert as an example, and we're like looking at the first scenario, and it's basically a firefight between armored cars between Italians and Germans, and it's like I would never buy Morris armored cars, right, for early war, but it's a fun thing to have and to play that scenario. So there's actually quite a lot of excitement amongst the group about playing a campaign, which is something we've never, especially with bolt action, never done. So,
and that comes to what he was saying though, is because we usually do tournament plays, or we're always thinking about tournaments, we do tend to not necessarily min-max, but definitely choose one car over another, one set of artillery over another, because of its ability. It's costed better. It's more effective, less points, or whatever the case may be. I am looking forward to this campaign for the simple fact that you get to see all these vehicles that were like, take my Japanese. I've been trying out the SSKI engineering vehicle. It is a vehicle that has 7 flamethrowers. Now, the rules only let you use 1 per turn, which is fine. Like, we know flamethrowers in this game, 7 would be, everybody would be playing this thing. But the funny thing is, everybody's saying, you got to play this, it's really good. There was only ever 7 made.
Right.
I heard somebody saying there was only ever 7 of these things made. So maybe you'll see more Chihas, or all the other terrible tanks, all the other terrible vehicles that they made in droves because they had them from World War I and World War II, and they were what they thought the fighting vehicle was going to be. And yeah, by the time 44 comes around, all those vehicles are gone, and you see the Sherman. But there was the Crusaders, the Matildas, all of these other tanks, and like you said, the Morris cars, you don't see. I'm looking forward to seeing why you don't see them, because when you play in the scenario, you will find out why you don't see them. But there was thousands of them, so.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, Derek. I think one with tournament is about points efficiency, right? It's about how do I get the best in my list for what it's going to do. But I think one of my favorite periods, not to go necessarily down a rabbit hole, but I think one of my favorite periods is early war, because their thinking was still had not really evolved from World War One, because there'd not been the opportunity to actually see what the next war was like. Right.
Well, the Germans sure knew
by the time of 19,
Maginal Line cough.
Yeah, exactly. But by the time you got to 1945, right, you've got combined operations. You've got special forces. You've got some of the best tanks that literally missed the end of the war by weeks. Right. So
Air power.
So you have jet fighters and
biplanes to jets
in those 6 years. is huge. Whereas I find the early war is very much, it's two wars that were being fought, I find. And that's why I'm looking forward to the campaign, because you would never really see that in a tournament. I know we did Adepticon where there was that theme, but even then you're still not choosing the weird stuff, right?
No,
Which
you're
is
still going
in
with
the
points.
campaign, they're like, in the, I think the first scenario in the campaign is, because that's what you've got to choose these Morris Minor armored cars with a machine gun, because that's what they had.
That's all it was
Because
about.
that's what it was at the time of the British Empire at that time, right? It's. I think campaigns seem to be a very exciting thing, and it's great to see a channel such as yours, Patrick, and I'm really looking forward to this next season. So to speak.
Season 2.
Season 2.
Officially called Season 2 now. There we go.
Yeah.
Of the campaign, because I want to follow the story along, and I want to see things I normally would not see. Like I can watch battle reports and I can watch one-off battles and stuff, and they're good, they're exciting, but it's equal, right? Yeah. Whereas I think with a campaign and what we saw with when you were doing Stalingrad and what we're looking forward to in this season is going to be really that evolving storyline. And I actually think the dice, in a way, play a bit more in the game in regards to, because there are some weird rules in the scenarios, right, that you would not normally see. And I think case in the example is in Case Blue, where you can use the railway gun that the Germans had, but you got to roll a dice on a table to see if it even can fire, or if it fires what round it fires. Like that to me is can make, well, this one dice roll I'm about to make could make or break this thing, which is in real life, which we talked about earlier, in real battles, it was those little degrees of luck or fortune or whatever that have the outcome on the battle.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm really looking forward to season 2 of Over the Top, and we'll see how that goes. So yeah, it's great. I'm buzzed. I'm buzzed for campaigning, and I'm buzzed for the next round.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, like the difference is between the tournament play and the campaign books, just from a strictly game playing point of view, there's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Big difference when you're playing the campaign scenarios. Even to just grab one and play it, you really get a different sense of the battle and what's going on and what you have at your disposal. It just feels more like you're invested.
Yeah.
In its outcome. Yeah. Whereas, like, let's just play 1,000 points, it's a catch match, and you're going to bring that armored car that performs really well in the generic 1,000-point game, but historically never saw any action because they couldn't get it to the battlefield. It was notorious. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's great because it allows you to see things that were a lot more prevalent and realistic on the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
And some things maybe that you just, because, and not, the term min-max, like you said, it's hard to use that in bolt action because people don't really play that way, but you do try to make your list. You want to win, right?
Yeah.
And to use an example, like the next scenario that we'll be doing, the Germans get 2 Tiger tanks to start off with. I'm like, okay, all right. So then you've got to go source out a couple of Tiger tanks, right? Like something maybe you're looking at, and you're like, I'm never going to use one of those. Why am I going to go, paint up a Tiger tank other than to have a display piece? But oh no, I need 2 of them, so I've got to get that going.
Yeah,
that'll be the next. Actually.
But that's one of the reasons, like why Germans are popular, or why you want to play World War II games, is because you want a Tiger. Right.
Yeah. Who doesn't
want the Tiger?
Yeah. Like you want to see that fear, right? And
yeah, exactly. I want to see it blow up or get blown up. Right. That's the cool thing about it.
Yeah, and just from that standpoint, the scenarios, and the way that they lay them out in the books and the historical context. I mean, if you're buying those books just to leaf through them for the units in the back, you're missing the point of bolt action, I think.
Yeah.
It's the meat and potatoes. It's in those scenarios. Playing those is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, this has been great, Pat, and having you on and talking to us about this. I absolutely, let's say, you've got me buzzing. And so you were talking about that you're close to your first episode. Is there are you aiming to have it up in December, or are you aiming January is kind of the time?
Most likely December. I mean, I know things get busy for everybody, but there's still a little bit of time left in November. I've got some time to continue working. My schedule's been kind of opened up a little bit to continue to get everything done. I'm in the final stages of finishing off the two aforementioned Tiger tanks that I need to get done. And I think I've got two buildings and an orchard to finish, just to get this one going. But then a lot of these components are used in other scenarios. So it was just, I didn't want to keep chasing the scenarios in the books. I wanted to take some time and just get the bulk of it done. I don't mind making one or two terrain pieces, like it's, to say, okay, like for the next scenario, I need to make a train station. I'm fine with that. But it was like the complete shift. So yeah, I would be fairly confident to say next month. Before the holidays, maybe I'm hoping, middle of the month, but things do get a little bit busy, but that's definitely the goal. Is to have it
awesome.
Open.
And that's on YouTube on Over the Top Gaming. That's right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'll try to remember to put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, if you can, and everybody like and subscribe, all that jazz, right?
yeah, and definitely when you come go to the tournament on November 25th, or will have been in the past November 25th, we'll make sure that you big it up at the event with all the players that are there. So we've got to get the word out about your channel.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's great. And one other thing I want to mention is something that I'm looking at doing is having, in order to get the time necessary to set everything up, like roadshow and kind of stream, and then record and post afterwards, right? So stream on Twitch and record and post on YouTube, like a tournament event. I'm looking at throwing an event, running it all myself at like a neutral location where I have more control over the time.
Yeah.
So sort of like from first thing in the morning till whenever at night, just have the space for a tournament and drum up interest to try and get 8 tables going if I can, or whatever. I think it's possible. I think there's enough community to make it happen, and
definitely,
and to have it set up where I can iron out all the kinks, stream the event, record everything, and be comfortable enough to have that go. So, just throwing that out there, that's something that's in the works.
Nice. That sounds awesome.
Would like to get that done before spring. I'm looking at. So.
Well, we're out for March.
What's that?
March, we're out.
In March, right? Yeah.
Oh, you guys are out of town or leaving?
Yeah, we'll be at the Adepticon.
Oh, at Adepticon. Yeah, right. I may try to go to that as well, right? So
end of March, yeah.
But
we might have a free seat. We generally drive 2 vehicles down. So
yeah.
Think about it. We don't mind extra passenger.
No.
I'll definitely keep that in mind. When is that? Is it toward the end of the month?
Like that's the week of I think it's 20th to 25th of March.
Yeah, somewhere that weekend. Third weekend of March, pretty much.
That's a pretty good date. It's not my anniversary, so
that's why I can't go to what's the one that happens in August? Is that LVO?
Or is it
open in August?
I get confused. Yeah.
Is that the one in Ottawa?
No, Las Vegas Open.
Right.
Apparently, they've got a pretty big bolt action community down there. I think it's in August. But anyways, it falls anniversary.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think I could manage going to Vegas and doing a bolt action tournament. I would get lost. Where's Pat? I don't know. I saw him. He was drunk somewhere, and that was it.
He lost all his money on that
Yeah,
table.
there's some slot machines over there last I saw.
Thank you very much, Pat, for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time, and look forward to seeing what you've got coming. And we'll see you around and have you back on after a few episodes and see how things are going.
Yeah, I'd definitely be up for that. Thanks for having me. Look forward to seeing you guys at the tourney coming up.
Definitely.
It's looking to be. I'm sure it's going to be awesome. It's shaping up to be pretty good, I'm sure. And to check in with you guys would be fantastic. After we get a couple of videos up, you can give me the hold me to everything that I've said. Let me know if I'm coming through.
Well, thanks for coming on, Patrick. For everybody listening, if you haven't gone over and seen on Over the Top Gaming, sorry, I was having a bit of a mind fart there. Definitely check out his channel. The stuff is phenomenal. It is. You will notice the learning curve if you watch the first one to the last one. But it is an amazing learning curve that he is definitely setting the bar for some people to step up to.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Yeah, and I like what you're doing here. This is great. We need more community.
Yes.
Thank you. And now back to the douchebags in the podcast.
Yeah. Those guys.
Interview with Pat Hamill of Over the Top Gaming, who's got a YouTube channel. We did battle reports. And then we're going to be talking about, if we have time, reviewing the Bolt Action Alliance 2023 scenario pack, looking at scenario 1 and how we would play that game. Like, what would our approach be to that? So,
Based on the nations that we play.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else, guys, before we head off?
Nope.
Till next time.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you very much for listening, listener, and we will see you next time.
See ya.
Result.
Keep your stick on the ice.